Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Natural Resources to order. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's our second meeting of the Standing Committee for the 23-24 Interim. And if any members are joining virtually, which we have welcomed today in light of the weather in northern Nevada, please be sure to keep your video on so we know we have a quorum. Please also be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking so that we can minimize background noise. And please remember that the chat feature is only to be used for technical assistance from our broadcast and production services staff. All right, with that, will the secretary please call roll?
Senator Goycochea.
Here.
Senator Scheibel. Assemblywoman Anderson.
Present.
Assemblywoman Considine.
Present.
Assemblyman DeLong.
Present.
Assemblyman Gurr.
Present.
Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Here.
Chair Pazina.
Present. And will you please mark Senator Scheibel present when she arrives? Also, please record that Assemblywoman Considine is serving as an alternate for Assemblywoman Bilbray Axelrod today, and we welcome her and are thrilled that she was able to join us. Our agenda today will include presentations, in fact, quite a few presentations, an update on water conservation efforts in Southern Nevada as they relate to the implementation of Assembly Bill 220 from last session, a presentation on the state's management of water resources after the recent Nevada Supreme Court decision, presentations on efforts around the country and in Nevada to address PFAS, a presentation from UNR on the Nevada Agricultural Experiment Station and their cooperative extension programs, regenerative agricultural practices, and finally, food production and food security in Nevada and an update on the Home Feeds Nevada program. But before we begin, just a few housekeeping announcements. First, this committee will be paperless, meaning that all materials will be provided electronically. Anyone who'd like to receive electronic notification of and access to the meeting's agendas, minutes, and final report can do so by signing up on the Nevada Legislature's website. This means that committee members will review the meeting materials on their laptops, so please don't take this as a sign of inattention. Second, a note to our presenters today. We ask that all presenters make sure to turn their microphones on before they begin their presentation. And if committee members have any questions during or after your presentation, please do identify yourself each time when you respond to a question. This assists our secretary in completing the minutes for the meeting. We also ask that the first time you speak, you spell your last name or first name, if hard to spell, just to help our secretary complete those minutes. And a note about public comment. During the interim, meetings typically have two opportunities for public comment, once at the beginning and then again at the end of the meeting. Members of the public may provide public comment in different ways, all of which are listed on the agenda. For anyone wishing to call in for public comment, please dial 888-475-4499. When prompted, provide the meeting ID. Please enter 894-8374-8658, and then press the pound sign. Broadcast and production services staff will indicate to you when it's your turn to speak. We ask that public comment made in person or by phone be kept to 2 minutes so that everyone interested in speaking may be accommodated and to ensure we get through the agenda in a timely fashion. Speakers are urged to avoid repetition or comments made by previous speakers. If you'd like to provide written comment, please either submit via email before, during, or after the meeting to nrinterim@lcb.state.nv.us or mail them to the Research Division at 401 South Carson Street, Carson City, Nevada, 89701, or you can fax them to 775-684-6400. And with that, we'll move into agenda item number 2, which is public comment, the first of the day. If there's anyone wishing to provide public comment here in Vegas, please do come to the table now. All right, Ms. Bray. Thank you. Sheila Bray, University of Nevada, Reno. We'd just like to show our support for the agenda item number 10 today, which is going to discuss the Home Feeds Nevada program. We work diligently with a number of different small agriculture producers and here in Southern Nevada to help out with food insecurity and food access through a number of different food pantries. And we also work in Northern Nevada and provide 20,000 pounds of ground beef every month through our Wolfpack Meats Initiative, which Dean Payne will talk a little bit more about today in our Cabiner presentation. But we just wanted to show our support for that program and how we've seen it really benefit Nevadans. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anyone else here in Las Vegas? All right. Do we have anyone in Carson City who'd like to make public comment? If so, I feel like I do see someone at the table. If so, please go ahead and share your name for the record and get started.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Pazina and Vice Chair Anderson. Leah Case, Leacase for the record, here today on behalf of the American Heart Association to put on the record the Heart Association's support for the Home Feeds Nevada program. This is my first time advocating for this program, so I had a lot of opportunity to look at the history. When SB 370 passed in 2021, it was not given any financial support. The ARPA funding that was given to this program totaled $2 million, and with that, over 2 million pounds of food has been collected from Nevada agriculture producers and distributed to Nevadans. This is a huge return on investment for Nevada. It's an economic stimulus for our agricultural communities, and it's fantastic for Nevadans. So just wanted to continue the support for Home Feeds Nevada and look for the governor and the 83rd legislative session to fund and continue the program. And Madam Chair, just with your indulgence for 1 second, my 3-year-old daughter Charlotte is at the Boys and Girls Club Smart Start Pre-K program, and they are watching this feed live now. So hi, Charlotte, and hi, Jamie, Brittany, and Michelle, her teachers. Thank you for that. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Case and Charlotte. We're so happy you're watching this morning. Welcome from the Natural Resources Committee. I believe we do have someone else in Carson City. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman Pazina. I am Karen Boger. That is B as in boy, O-E-G-E-R. I am a founding member of Coalition for Healthy Nevada Lands and speaking to you for them. Tina Nappy had sent in on Monday public comment, which is in your records. And unfortunately, we sent a second one yesterday morning, a little too late to be included in your record. But hopefully, you may have already seen it, or you soon shall. But in essence, Tina's letter said that it is stated that it is time for the state of Nevada to express its concern and support for removing excess wild and free-roaming horses in Nevada, and we gave 2 suggested asks, one of which was to please send a letter from the committee to BLM Director Tracy Stone Manning. Well, we are giving you in our second letter a good idea for how to fulfill that in an easy way. We had sent a sign-on letter to Director Stone Manning back in December with 49 signatories, and we are still collecting signatures, the latest from the Sagebrush Ecosystem Council last week, but there are many others still in consideration. So we ask that you please read the letter, have a discussion about it, and consider adding your signature to the many ones that are continuing to pile up. Secondly, the second ask was to do legislation expressing your support for removing excess horses. And to help you do that, we also had sent you a letter February 6th expressing the hope that you would put a number of your meetings
We
out.
have surpassed the 2 minutes, so if you can quickly finish up, we'd love to allow you to very quickly finish.
Okay. Well, hopefully you will consider putting yet more meetings, particularly in the 7 or more of the 7 counties that expressed an emergency situation on their properties. We recognize it's expensive but essential action in order to fully understand and address the urgent issue by having boots on the ground and talking to the stakeholders affected out there. Thank you so much for your dedicated public service for Nevada's natural resources and public lands, our savings account for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the hardworking LCB staff is working hard to get that uploaded right now, the information that you sent. I don't see anyone else in Carson City or Las Vegas broadcast. Do we have anyone on the phones?
If you'd like to participate in public comment, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Our Nevada and public lands, our savings account for the future.
Thank you so much. And the hardworking LCB staff is working hard to get that loaded right now.
Caller,
Can you
you're
please
unmuted
share your
again.
name with us?
Hi, this is Pam Harrington from Lander County.
If you'd like to participate in public comment, please press star 9.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Hi, my name is Pam Harrington. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please proceed with your 2 minutes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Harrington is Harrington. I'm the Public Resource Officer from Lander County. And to follow up with what Karen Boger just mentioned, I've got written testimony here for you. Lander County is experiencing a crisis situation regarding the management of wild horses in our county. Wild horses double in population every 4 years. Only starvation, dehydration, and snowbound conditions have reduced populations. This management is cruel, and the horses suffer along with the wildlife that are impacted negatively from this overpopulation. We have had a gather to reduce numbers. We have not had a gather since 2011. That's 13 years, with every 4 years, or they're doubling. Our best case herd management area has 205% above the appropriate management level, and our worst is 9,800% above the appropriate management level. Unfortunately, Lander isn't the only county with these conditions, and you are likely aware 7 Nevada counties have declared state of emergencies for wild horse and burro management. Some producers in Lander County have been asked to endure voluntary non-use of their grazing allotments and keep stock water tanks full for horses during drought conditions. This places a hardship on them and wildlife. So here's the deal. We're inviting the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Natural Resources members to hold one of your meetings in Battle Mountain, and we'll provide you a tour so you can witness the wildlife or the overpopulation of horses yourself. Thank you so much. I hope I came through okay.
Yep, thank you so much. BPS, do we have anyone else on the phones? And I would remind everyone, I've given a little leeway with the 2 minutes, but we do have challenging weather conditions up north, and it's important that we get everyone safely out on time today. So we are going to hold everyone to that 2 minutes. Any other comments, BPS?
Once again, if you'd like to participate in public comment, please press star 9 on your phone to take your place in the queue. Chair, the public line is open and working. However, there are no more callers at this time.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for public comment this morning. I'd like to move us to agenda item number 3, approval of the minutes for the meeting on January 29th. Committee members, you should have all received the minutes and had some time to review them. Are there any questions or concerns from the committee? Okay. Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 29th, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair, and thank you so much for the second. And I believe, was that Assemblyman DeLong? Oh, Senator
Senator
Goicoechea.
Goicoechea.
Sorry about that.
Trying to keep the
Wonderful
balance
to
between the
see.
chambers. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. We do have a motion to approve the minutes from Assemblywoman, our Vice Chair Anderson. We have a second from Senator Goicoechea. Are there any comments or questions on the motion? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. All right, this motion passes. Look at that, the very first motion of the Interim Joint Committee on Natural Resources, and we passed it easily. Always a good start. Granted, it was on meeting minutes, but I'll take it. That will move us to the next item on our agenda, item number 4. Updates on water conservation efforts and the implementation of Assembly Bill 220 in Southern Nevada. For our first presentation today, we'll hear from the Southern Nevada Water Authority to provide an update on the status of Assembly Bill 220, a water conservation omnibus bill, which many members of this committee and our colleagues on natural resources this past session worked extraordinarily hard on. So I'd like to really thank everyone for their work over the past session, and of course Southern Nevada Water Authority for providing so much effort into answering all of our questions on AB 220 during the session. We have Ms. Colby Pellegrino, SNWA's Deputy General Manager for Resources, and Mr. Andy Belanger, SNWA's Director of Public Services, joining us today here in Las Vegas. Oh, and it looks like we have a guest joining as well. Always good to see you too. Please go ahead whenever you're ready and introduce yourselves for the record.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Colby Pellegrino. I'm the Deputy General Manager of the Southern Nevada Water Authority. My last name is P as in Paul, Ellegrino.
And I'm Andy Belanger, Belanger.
Wonderful. Please proceed and thank you.
Can you guys see the presentation? Okay. I'm here today to give you an update of where we're at kind of on all fronts. So starting with the Colorado River, that's over 90% of the supply for Southern Nevada. About 7 out of every 10 residents live in our service area. And our primary source of supply continues to be depleted by drought and climate change that has affected the river for over the last 20 years. When we look at inflow on the Colorado River, we really got a blessing last year, and our inflows were significantly above average. But if we look at this chart of historical inflow over the last 20 years, can you go back one? You can just see that the really wet years are usually followed by a couple of really nasty dry years. So it helped, but it's not the panacea that we need on the river. Next slide. So if you look at this next slide, this is the storage in Lake Powell and Lake Mead fluctuating throughout time. And right before the gray shaded bar on the right, you see an uptick in storage in both reservoirs. That was the wet winter last year. So it was good. It helped. It moved the lakes in the right direction. But you can see that we did not significantly recover storage. And with the below average year this year, we are continuing to see both reservoirs decline. Our snowpack, these numbers are a little bit old because of the committee timelines. We've improved slightly, but we had that 160+% of average year last year. And this year's really looking like average snowpack and in the 70th, high 70 percentile runoff and snowpack on the Colorado River. The river, as we all know, is shared by 7 states and Mexico. About 40 million people rely on the Colorado River, 30 tribes, over 5 million acres of irrigated farmland, along with a whole host of natural things that we love. And all of our policy on the river is expiring in 2026. So in earnest, we have began negotiations on the next round of operating criteria for the river. We are hoping to be able to better address climate change, to be more responsive to the system's conditions. We know we are going to have to take more reductions more often in order to manage the dwindling supply of the Colorado River with all of the existing demands. So Southern Nevada has been, for over 2 decades, really actively taking on a water conservation role. And this chart shows where our consumptive use of Colorado River was heading into the 2015-2020 timeframe. And as you can see, we were still slowly stepping up our Colorado River water use, except for that really rainy year we had in 2019. So our board came together and adopted a new water conservation goal in 2020. And since that time, we have gone on an all fronts war against wasteful water in our valley to help make the community more sustainable. Many of these programs you've heard about, so I won't go into them individually, but my purpose here is to say outdoor water use is the #1 way that we use water in Southern Nevada. We're recycling everything indoors, and every possible way that we can take on that water use and manage it to meet our water conservation goal, we are doing with your help and on our own with the help of our local municipalities. State law required the removal of non-functional grass in Clark County by 2026. That was AB 356. We are well underway in implementing this turf removal and continue in that regard. Thanks to a state grant, we temporarily increased our incentive for homeowners. So these are not subject to the mandatory removal, but landscaping costs are getting more expensive like everything else. So we wanted to make it more affordable for our homeowners to make these conversions as well. So we have been on track to meet our residential goal, and in fact, we've been exceeding it with the amount of turf we removed. Over 5 million acre feet of turf removed in 2023, saving over 315 million gallons annually. Our non-single family, so this is primarily the people affected by that AB 356, is a little bit behind our benchmark, but they have until 2026 to get this turf removed. And we expect to see a lot more conversions coming in the future. Still over 7 million square feet of grass removed under the program last year. New rebates and grants will help fund existing evaporative cooling conversions to technology that uses less water. And beginning in September of 2023, you can no longer install new evaporative cooling in new construction in Southern Nevada. To go along with all of this, we've implemented a new rebate for trees. So we know the urban heat island effect plagues all urban cities. Our streets and our roofs capture heat, hold it in, make the cities hotter at night than the surrounding areas. One of the ways to help that is with shade. So through our landscape conversion program, we are offering an additional incentive to plant trees, and we'll pay extra money for every tree that goes into a landscape conversion. So all of these things together, it showed you the more shaded bars on the left, and now if we look at our use on the right, we're seeing it move in the right direction. So we're continuing to grow our economy, we're continuing to add new homes and businesses, we're continuing to face increased temperatures, and our water use is going down significantly at the same time. For 2024, we really remain focused on our Colorado River negotiations, continuing to meet our water conservation goal, and supporting the existing programs that we have in the implementation of the existing law. So Assembly Bill 220 is the next part that we want to update on. This included provisions for septic systems in the Las Vegas Valley, some water conservation efforts related to the Colorado River specifically, how we develop in outlying areas, and a septic conversion program for well owners who are also connecting to municipal water. So far on AB 220's implementation, thank you, Andy. Our board has approved the voluntary septic conversion program in July of 2023. We've entered into various grants, including with the Bureau of Reclamation for that program. And we also, in November, adopted a resolution requiring no turf on property served by the Colorado River water, excepting schools and parks. In progress, we are working to put the WaterSense landscape irrigation fixture requirement into code for new development, and we are working to continue to establish that irrigation efficiency monitoring program for our non-single family properties. As far as septic conversions go, we continue to work with the Southern Nevada Health District on an interlocal agreement for a fully funded septic conversion program that is voluntary. We would manage the properties and the contractors directly as the Southern Nevada Water Authority through an interlocal agreement. We have over 450 interested properties today, and we're focusing on areas that we have known groundwater issues. Right now, we have about $11 million in grants that we intend to apply to sort of jumpstart this program once all those interlocal agreements are in place. Our partially funded program covers the cost, 85% of the cost for conversion up to $40,000. Our property owners are able to manage the construction themselves. We don't have to manage them because our grant restrictions require us to have all sorts of monitoring needed on the other program that we don't need here. But we are able to establish eligible costs, and we have completed a couple of these already. So here's a list of the stats on what we've done through our partially funded program. The number of submitted applications always significantly lags the people that move on to the next step. We get a lot of curiosity inquiries, but then it just takes a while sometimes for people to get their plans in place. So we've got 5 municipal water users approved and 3 on the groundwater management program, and we've completed 6 of those 8 approvals to date, funding about $180,000 in cost. There was also an emergency water use limitation that was included in AB 220 to help us further manage demand if we entered into a crisis on the Colorado River. That goes into effect if Nevada's Colorado River allocation is reduced to less than 270,000 acre feet. Right now, our allocation is currently 279,000 acre feet. So we're above that limitation. It won't go into effect in 2024. And I would say the good news highlight is that our water use for 2023 was 188,000 acre feet. So even if this provision were eligible today, at this point in time, we've managed our water use where those sorts of emergency measures are not necessary at this time. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Wonderful. Does anyone have any questions? Please raise your hand for me if you have any questions here or in Carson City. Okay, Vice Chair Anderson.
Thank you so much, Chair. I just have a question about slide 19, and it has to do with the irrigation water efficiency programs that are planned for the future. Would that be approved through the county, or is that something that you're working with other entities about with different grant areas? Just wondering how that approval stage would take place.
Madam Chair, this is Andy Belanger for the record. So that program would be established by the Water Authority Board and the Water Authority. So the AB 220 authorizes the Southern Nevada Water Authority to establish the water efficiency monitoring program. And so we worked during the session to provide an additional year for participants to do that and for us to establish that program. So we have some time to do that. And so that's one of the things that we'll work on in the next year and then notify those property owners.
Great. Thank you so much for that clarification. And I was remiss in thanking you for that presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for answering, and also to our Vice Chair for the question. Do we have any other questions? I'll go ahead and ask one question. How much interest have you had looking ahead in regards to the septic conversion?
Madam Chair, Andy Belanger for the record. We've seen quite a bit of interest from the community. There's a lot of people who want to get off of their septics. We're seeing that particularly in areas where you have a high concentration of them. So sections 10 and 11 in the central part of Las Vegas is an area where we see a lot of interest in the program. I think the challenge is until we in the health district have an interlocal agreement that actually sets up the fully funded program, everyone's in a holding pattern on that. And so we've been working with the health district to get that program stood up. And frankly, once the health district surveys the universe of known septic property owners, we'll have a greater sense of participation, because AB 220 creates the voluntary fee, right? And so once they are notified that there is a fee, and to be eligible for the 100%, they have to pay the fee, we will have a much, much greater sense of what that universe of participants are that want financial assistance. There are still city and county ordinances that mandate connection on the books right now when the properties are within 400 feet. So there is a requirement to get off of septics in local code. The question is how many property owners, how many septic owners want to take advantage of the 100% assistance program and pay a fee? And that question hasn't been asked or answered yet, but we anticipate it will be in the first half of this year, and we'll be able to give you additional information once that's done.
Thank you so much. We'll definitely look forward to that. And thank you both so much for the presentation today, both recapping and sharing future efforts as well as an update on AB 220. Seeing no further questions, we thank you so much and you're excused. Thank you. We're actually going to go a little out of order right now, and we are going to head to item number 8 on the agenda, which is a presentation on the Nevada Agricultural Experiment Station and Cooperative Extension Programs of the University of Nevada, Reno. And I believe we have today Dr. William Payne, Dean of the College of Agriculture, Biotechnology, and Natural Resources at UNR, presenting on the Nevada Agricultural Experiment Station and UNR's cooperative extension programs. He's here with us in Las Vegas, along with Ms. Bray. Welcome, Dean Payne, and please go ahead whenever you're ready and introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Pazina and members of the committee. William Payne, P-A-Y-N-E, and as mentioned, I'm Dean of the College of Agriculture, Biotechnology, and Natural Resources at University of Nevada, Reno. Thanks very much for the invitation to present and share some particular highlights of the college and its major units. As a founding college of the original land-grant institution in the state, we have a long tradition of excellence in teaching, research, and outreach to Nevada communities that helps the university fill its 3-part land-grant mission. And we refer to that mission as, we compare it to a stool, or 3 legs, and we'll go into those now. We are proud to do this work through our teaching facilities on campus and on a line, and along with over 20 extension offices and 10 experiment station facilities in the state. I like to stress the fact that these are state agencies. Yes, we're associated with UNR, but our mandate is statewide for all of them. And you can see that on the map on the screen. It highlights the approximate location of our various locations, including areas with joint partnerships between extension and experiment stations. It's a federal expectation that those 2 agencies collaborate. 25% of their federal funding has to be part of integrated projects, in fact. So again, as I was saying, the land-grant mission is often described as a 3-legged stool. That first leg of the stool is academic teaching. That's part of the Morrill Act that was signed in 1862 by Abraham Lincoln in the middle of the Civil War. So the teaching aspect that we cover includes 13 majors, 8 minors, and 8 graduate programs housed in 4 academic departments. So each of those would have at least 2 academic majors. Those are agriculture, veterinary, and rangeland sciences, biochemistry and molecular biology, natural resources and environmental science, and then nutrition and dietetics. Now, we're about to launch 2 new programs due to student demand. One is a dual degree in agriculture science and economics, and that's in cooperation with the College of Business. And then a second is a minor in agricultural communications. Whether it's 4-H or FFA, or even among our students, we stress the importance of effective communications. And there are many careers associated with that. And then we're looking forward to the launch this fall of a new program in outdoor recreation management. The college manages hundreds of thousands of acres of forest, range, and camp facilities. And so we believe that because in Nevada, the outdoor recreation economy is important and ever growing, we think that it's important that we have workforce development for that. Overall, the college serves about 1,500 students, and we have over 700 faculty and staff, and that includes about 120 tenure-track faculty. Now, the lower right photo on this slide is our agriculture, veterinary, and rangeland student ambassadors. This group of students are leaders within their respective programs and work directly with our alumni, stakeholders, and industry to promote their programs and get firsthand learning. I want to just point out the upper right is one of our nutritionists who focuses on gut genomics of babies. And then the lower left is a picture of a student studying teff. So that's a plant native to Ethiopia. It turns out grows very well in northern Nevada. So let's move on to the research leg of that stool, if you will, which is the experiment station. That was created again by the Hatch Act in the 1880s. So we carry that out at field stations, labs, and other facilities across the state. Experiment station faculty conduct research in critical issues such as biotechnology, food science, nutrition, crop and animal products, natural resources, and climate science. The experiment station receives federal funding appropriate under the Hatch Act to promote high-quality research activities on agricultural, natural resources, and other things that are important to Nevada. State funds are matched to these federal resources to conduct this research statewide. So that's a federal requirement to receive those federal funds, a state match. The bottom center photo shows a part of the Rafter 7 merino sheep herd that we have in Eureka. Those are raised under the harsh high desert mountain conditions. They're world known for their wool and sheep meat. And then they're used for research and for helping to fund the station's operations through annual sheep sales and the sale of woolen products and apparel. So we have our own woolen clothing line. The top right shows research on alfalfa. That's one of the most important crops in Nevada, but it's also highly water dependent. We also have faculty working on precision irrigation methods, so water use efficiency is a big deal for us as well. And then the lower left is, you see a cactus, that is an experiment ongoing actually in Moapa Valley in Clark County, and it's addressed towards biofuel and fodder production. So those are just a few examples of the research being conducted by our faculty at the experiment station to tackle some of Nevada's largest agricultural and natural resource issues. The third leg of that stool is extension, and that's been around since 1914 as part of the Smith-Lever Act. So that's the outreach arm of the college and the university. And the overall mission is to translate research-based knowledge into practical education for all Nevadans. It's a unique federal, state, county partnership that allows us to be nimble and develop new programming to address changing critical community needs. Programming and extension is based on needs assessments. So these are formal assessments of the community of what the needs are. And so what you'll see on the slide are photos that highlight just a few extension programs in the natural resources area. So you see school hydroponics and indoor agriculture. There's a consumer horticulture education program that's highlighted. And then you'll see a curricula on wild and natural resources management being delivered to Nevada high schools. So that's the range school that we conduct. And then we also have several programs working with Nevada tribes very closely through the federal recognized tribal extension program, or FERTIP as it's known. And so there we reach Nevada's reservations, 3 of them, and then we are engaged in programming to help all tribes. And we've done, in fact, needs assessments for education among all tribes in the state. And then we've expanded our programming recently by taking over extended studies from the provost office. So we've only just welcomed it since 2022. So it's new to us, but it's not new to the university. In fact, it's been around longer than Extension itself. It was started in 1890s. So they were founded also to help outreach, the outreach part of the land-grant mission, and they provided special interest programming to educating those students not pursuing a bachelor's degree. So it's sort of geared for the non-traditional student. We've got over 86 programs offered each year, and those we're always adjusting those. We're increasing them or reducing them according to demand. Right now, we reach every year about 3,300 students, and those are anything from children to adults. One of the ones that has been very impactful for us, that allows us to use our expertise from the college, is with the Rangeland and Fire Ecology program. So the BLM from the Department of Interior came to me some years ago and said, we can't retain or promote BLM firefighters if they don't have credits in rangeland ecology and management. And so we devised a program especially for BLM firefighters, and that's turned out to be very impactful. That originally was just for Nevada firefighters. Now the BLM brings firefighters from all over the United States to be trained. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, our work is done alongside federal, state, and county partners. Should we have an increase in State Department, there are a few new directions we'd like to move into. We are applying science to solve some of Nevada's most important issues, including improved access to nutrition and food security under harsh growing conditions, addressing food supply chain obstacles, and managing our interaction with the natural environment. We're investing now heavily into urban agriculture and indoor agriculture technologies, particularly in Clark County. And then we're expanding partnerships with the Nevada food pantries and food producers to increase efficiency, availability of, and access to healthy food. In our Department of Nutrition, we're initiating a new program in food science. We're one of the few states who does not have a program in food science. In fact, I think we're the only one. In the same vein, as Sheila mentioned, we're looking for ways to increase meat harvesting for our producers and the availability of our meat protein to our food pantries across the state. Wolfpack Meats, which has been around, I think, since the 1960s, is a meat harvesting facility that is operated by Experiment Station and located in Reno. It serves Nevada farmers and ranches and adds hands-on experience for our meat science students. I've revitalized our meat science program with a new meat science. We've acquired a several $million endowment for meat science. And currently, as Sheila mentioned, we're providing 20,000 pounds of ground beef to the Northern Nevada food banks each month through the Home Feeds Nevada program. The success of that program has shown the increased need for safe and healthy meat protein. We'd like to expand Wolfpack Meats to increase capacity for producers and provide meat protein to food banks both in northern and southern Nevada, and we believe we have the capacity to do so. Another area of growth and investing is investing in Nevada's youth. We've now got 2 4-H camps. There are many states that do not even have one. So our state 4-H camp at Lake Tahoe, which has been there since the 1930s, and our most recent camp in Alamo, Texas. We have invested in our commitment to increase outdoor education opportunities for youth throughout the state. I just have to mention the Alamo facility would not have been possible without support from key commissioners, especially Commissioner Marilyn Kirkpatrick and Varlon Higbee from Lincoln County. So within a year of us opening a new 4-H camp, we had over 800 students from Clark County schools participate in both day and overnight camps. In many cases, this is the first time that many of those children had any outdoor education experience. So it's been quite impactful. So moving on, we have a very interactive, tactile annual field day that I'd like to invite all of the committee to attend and the general public. It's our signature event. It showcases all aspects of our college's research and outreach activities. It's free. It's family-oriented. It takes place Friday, May 31st from 2 to 6 p.m. at our historic Valley Road Ranch. This farm was purchased in the late 1800s to support experiment station work, and we hope to see you there. And with that, I'll thank you and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Dean Payne. That was a great presentation. We really enjoyed it. I believe we have a question from Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch in Carson City.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dean, so much for going over all of these programs. It sounds like we're doing some pretty incredible work in the state, and I appreciate your efforts there. I have a couple questions. I think I'm going to start with the nutrition. I am a teacher, and so that always piques my interest. And so my question is, as far as nutrition in schools go, I know that's been a big concern with our schools, making sure our kids are getting healthy food on a regular basis. Have you done any work with our school districts or Nevada Department of Ed on nutritional standards or getting healthy food to our schools?
For the record, William Payne again. Yes. The nice thing about being in a college of this sort is we do everything from very basic research. So I mentioned the work on infants, gut genomics. But we also do very applied and outreach aspects, especially through extension on nutrition. So you're probably aware of SNAP-Ed. The college and extension in particular are very integral to the management of the SNAP-Ed program. And so that's carried out and very impactful throughout the states, and that includes direct interaction with schools. You may have heard of our Chefs for Kids programs. We're heavily involved with that as well, and that has direct outreach to many schools. And then we have a number of extension faculty who are in one form or another directly engaged with schools.
Thank you so much. And Chair, I do have a second. Would you like me to hold that or do that now?
Go ahead with your second question, and then we'll move after that to Vice Chair Anderson. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So my second question, I know you mentioned climate impacts on our producers, and I know that regenerative agriculture is something that a lot of people are looking into. And so I just wondered what work you're doing on regenerative agriculture, and then what supports you're able to provide to our Nevada producers as they're making that transition.
William Payne, for the record. So we have a multifaceted approach to what is now being called regenerative agriculture. Other people would use terms like conservation agriculture. But the three basic components have to do with soil conservation, trying to minimize tillage, trying to keeping soil covered to the extent possible with residue. And then the other one is rotation with other crops. And in particular, legumes, if possible. So all of that we do through our crop and agronomy research. We have anything from crop breeders. I showed a slide of teff. That's something that we've introduced as an important rotation crops with alfalfa, for example, that breaks the disease cycle. And although it's very difficult at times to introduce what some would call no-till farming in agriculture that's exclusively irrigated, nonetheless we can go to what we would call conservation tillage. In other words, we try to minimize the amount of tillage to reduce carbon emissions and to maintain soil structure and that sort of thing. So we have a whole gamut of addressing that. And then, again, the classic paradigm for a land-grant college is to focus on research, but then you have to have that knowledge-based, research-based technology transferred to the farmers, and that is done effectively through extension. So you have the basic research, the applied research, and then you have the transfer of knowledge through extension. So it's very important that you have that integrated cycle.
Thank you so much.
Does that answer your questions?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the great questions. Next, actually, instead of the Vice Chair, we are going to head over to Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just a point of clarification, I think. You had mentioned that the second 4-H camp was in Alamo, Texas. Did you mean Alamo in Lincoln County?
I beg your pardon. Most certainly did.
Okay, thank you.
And I cannot imagine Commissioner Kirkpatrick financing a 4-H camp in Alamo, Texas. That's my Texas A&M roots. I apologize. William Payne, for the record.
Thank you so much for the question. I also imagine that that was what you meant when you shared that. Do we have any other questions? Please raise any hands here in Vegas or in Carson City or on Zoom if you have any other questions. I have a question, and then after that, I know you have a flight, so I will be quick. Out of curiosity, and I would imagine they have, has your team worked closely with DCNR and the Department of Agriculture and around the state looking at potential job opportunities within the state for your graduates?
William Payne, for the record. Absolutely. It's interesting that you say that. There is a grassroots movement among students right now, or student ambassadors that I just showed in one of the photos. So traditionally, we participated in what we call STEM field days. So we work with College of Engineering and College of Science. But there's a sort of a grassroots movement to start having our own sort of cabinet, if you will, career day to focus on the things that we attract. So definitely that would be in the areas of agriculture, and there are many, as far as crops and animals, but also because we train so many people who go into the federal services, whether it's the Forest Service or BLM, et cetera. We work with Fish and Wildlife. We typically invite these potential employees to that, to those career days as well. So yeah, yes, we do. I think we should do more. I think that we should be inviting some of the national employers as we get stronger and stronger in agriculture as a college, we start to attract more and more people to the state to look at our students. And I think that's one of the reasons we see enrollment growing so much.
Thank you so much. And I know that Director Gokachia is present in Carson City right now, so I know he's listening and hope that he will be recruiting a number of your students. Thank you so much for the presentation today. I don't see any other hands raised. So with that, we thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And we are going to get back to our agenda with item number 5. The presentation on the decision of the Nevada Supreme Court relating to the authority of the state engineer to manage and administer water resources. So nothing too controversial there, huh? We're going to have a presentation from Nevada's Division of Water Resources to discuss the management and administration of the state's water resources in the aftermath of the recent case decided by the state Nevada Supreme Court. And we have our state engineer, Mr. Adam Sullivan, who will be joining us today, I believe, along with Ms. Flatley. And we thank you for joining us from Carson City, and we look forward to having you introduce yourselves and present when ready. And I must say, Mr. Sullivan, I miss you. I felt like I saw you almost every day of my life during sessions. So it's nice to see you again.
Thank you, Chair Pazina. It's good to be back. We are here to discuss a recent Nevada Supreme Court decision that was issued just this January. Is regarding the authority of the state engineer to administer water resources. And this is significant because it really has direct relationship to topics that have been the subject of recent proposed legislation and also presentations by our office to the legislature about current water management challenges. So this was a unanimous decision. In short, it affirmed state engineer authorities to protect water rights using best available science and to conjunctively manage interconnected sources of water. Conjunctive management, as I'm using it here, generally refers to settings where there's a connection between surface water and groundwater sources, where there's depletion or a potential for conflict between surface water rights and groundwater rights. What do we do about it, and how do we avoid conflict with the least amount of harm? Many would say that this is squarely within the authority of the state engineer and the Division of Water Resources, but that authority has been questioned because water law is not explicit. So this map shows the area that was the subject of this Supreme Court decision. The lower White River flow system is up to the northeast of Las Vegas, approximately 60 miles by 20 miles, spanning Clark and Lincoln counties. The geology is such that groundwater across the area is extraordinarily flat, water surface elevations, or the potentiometric surface, and very closely connected. This is highly unusual for a region this large with multiple topographic basins. It's important because pumping within the LWRFS can have direct impacts on spring flow at the Warm Springs area, which is the headwaters of the river, of the Muddy River, on the east sort of central side of this image, flowing into that northern arm of Lake Mead. The Muddy River is a fully decreed surface water sources, and the rights are all senior to groundwater rights within the LWRFS. So State Engineer Order 1309 made a determination of how much groundwater could be developed in the LWRFS without further decline in spring flow. The order was appealed, which led to this Supreme Court decision. And now I'll turn it over to Melissa Flatley to describe what exactly the decision says.
Good morning, Melissa Flatley, F-L-A-T-L-E-Y. I'm the Chief Administrative Law Judge at the Division of Water Resources, and thank you very much for inviting us to come and talk about the Supreme Court opinion this morning. So in our slides, we've taken quotes from the opinion. We've abbreviated the citations to just the page number, but the full case citation is located there at the bottom of this slide. And in this opinion, the court recognized the authority for the state engineer to delineate the LWRFS as a single hydrographic unit for conjunctive management and joint administration of multiple basins through a series of building on express and implied statutory authority. In step one, the court used the plain language of the Nevada revised statutes, primarily NRS 533.085, which prohibits impairment of vested water rights, and NRS 533.030, which recognizes that all statutorily granted water rights are given subject to existing rights. Taken together, the court concluded that no statutorily granted water right may impair vested water rights. In step two, the court built on this statutory concept that vested rights must be free from impairment and inferred that it's necessary for the state engineer to be able to determine, one, the amount of unappropriated water in the system, considering both surface and groundwater, and two, consider the impacts of pumping on the surface water source. The state engineer has the implied authority to conjunctively manage surface and groundwater and to jointly administer across multiple administrative basins based on the interconnected nature of that water. The court went on to support its findings of implied authority for conjunctive management and joint administration by looking to the legislative policy declarations contained in NRS 533.024. In particular, the provisions sub 1, C, and E concerning the state engineer's use of the best available science in rendering decisions, and also to manage conjunctively the appropriation, use, and administration of all waters, saying since the state engineer must have the ability to conjunctively manage and jointly administer water sources across multiple basins in order to prevent the impairment of senior vested rights under NRS 533.085, we hold that he has the implied statutory authority to do so. And although the court had identified these express and implied authorities, they went on to directly redress the respondent's argument that no statute authorizes the state engineer to redefine, combine, or delineate previously established basins. And it reviewed, quote, the multitude of statutory authority, unquote, that gave the state engineer the power to conjunctively manage and jointly administer the subject basins. The court said, quote, we take this opportunity to interpret each statute in turn in order to clarify the state engineer's authority to conjunctively manage and jointly administrate water. The first statute that they highlighted was NRS 534.080, because groundwater may only be appropriated after making the same considerations as appropriations of surface water in NRS 533.370, the court said groundwater is also subject to non-impairment of vested rights and is thus subject to conjunctive management and joint administration concepts. The court also acknowledged that it had previously addressed the concept of conjunctive management, although it hadn't used that term in its decision in Eureka County versus the state engineer. There, the court had held that groundwater appropriations that deplete springs were a conflict for purposes of determining whether water is available for appropriation under NRS 533.370. Thus, the court had previously recognized the interconnected nature of surface water and groundwater, although, as I said, they didn't use the term conjunctive management. The court next looked to the authority for the state engineer to designate an area as a basin and to conduct investigations in any basin or portion thereof, as provided in NRS 534.030 and 534.110. The court found it was appropriate to defer to the state engineer's interpretation of basin as including an aquifer, and thus concluded that the state engineer may include multiple previously delineated basins as subbasins when they are all pumping groundwater from that same aquifer. Once recognizing the LWRF as a basin, the court held the state engineer shall conduct investigations in a basin to determine whether adequate groundwater supply exists for all permitted and vested rights under existing statutory authority. The court lastly addressed the state engineer's rulemaking authority in designated basins. Designation occurs under NRS 534.120, and the Supreme Court said Order 1309 was an appropriate method of rulemaking. In a footnote, they highlighted that one of the basins had not previously been designated. However, the other statutory authorities for the state engineer to conjunctively manage and jointly administrate allowed Order 1309 to be effective in that basin as well. There was addressed primarily in a footnote, the Supreme Court said that the Endangered Species Act or avoiding liability for take of an endangered species cannot be used to impair an existing water right under various statutory authority. However, preservation of wildlife is part of the public interest considerations previously recognized in the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe decision, and it's properly considered by the state engineer when considering availability of water for appropriation. Finally, the court found the respondents had received constitutionally adequate constitutionally adequate notice and an opportunity to be heard on factual issues related to Order 1309. The court found there were no policy or management issues resolved in Order 1309, so there was no need for an opportunity to be heard on those matters. Because Order 1309 rescinded a portion of a prior interim order that reordered priority rights, the court found that there had been no deprivation of property. Further, there was no loss of flow or a possible outcome of curtailment because Order 1309 was pure factual findings. So there was no additional due process element for that deprivation of property from loss of water flow. So right now, after the opinion was issued, several parties have petitioned for rehearing by the Supreme Court. At this point, I haven't seen anything from the court on whether they will order a response to those petitions or how they may rule on that petition for rehearing. And I don't know a timeline on that. So until that happens, the decision will be at the Supreme Court. Once the petition for rehearing is determined and the time period set forth in the rules has passed, it will be returned to the district court, and there will be further proceedings on whether Order 1309 is supported by substantial evidence. Only after, and of course that decision would also be subject to appeal and stay. So only after Order 1309 is found to have been supported by substantial evidence, and if there's no stay preventing further action, at that point the state engineer will begin its Phase 2 process, as was contemplated throughout the proceedings, to address those policy and management questions that come about based on the factual findings set forth in Order 1309. We anticipate that that process will be comprised of a series of public meetings and evidentiary hearings regarding all of those many issues. including locations of pumping, seniority of rights within the LWRFS, and the use of water that's already been appropriated.
Here's what I see as some important takeaways from this decision. First, the Supreme Court decision affirms the state engineer authority to make decisions supported by science to protect water rights and the public interest. The decision clarifies the state engineer's implicit authority. It reinforces that what we're doing is the right thing to do. Secondly, it supports long-term water security for Nevada. As water is developed over time, we gain more knowledge about water available to meet long-term needs. We need to use this knowledge so water resources can be developed responsibly and minimize the risk for conflict or curtailment. Third, it resolves issues contemplated in AB 378 from the last legislative session. This bill proposed language about best available science and recognizing connections between surface water and groundwater sources. The ambiguity in law that led to AB 378 has now been clarified by this Supreme Court decision. As a closing thought, the hydrogeologic setting is highly variable around the state. What works in the LWRFS is not necessarily what might work in the Walker River Basin or the Humboldt River Basin or the Death Valley Flow System or Amargosa Desert. Every area is very unique, and this needs to be understood for accurate and effective conjunctive management. And with that, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much to you both for the presentation. Not shockingly, we do have some questions. I'm going to start in Carson City with Vice Chair Anderson, and then we'll go to Senator Goicoechea and then Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch. And then as more questions arise, we can get to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation on the lawsuit. I received a copy of it, had a chance to read through it, and was like, I'm not an attorney, so I'm so happy somebody that is was able to explain it. But as I look through your presentation on the still to come, in particular, the administrative process and the review, I want to say it's towards the end of the presentation. Is that going to need more staff, and or does that mean then that an already smaller staff will have to be brought for, be given even more work? I guess what I'm asking is, how will that impact the other work that you have to do on a daily basis?
There's many, thank you for the question, Adam Sullivan for the record. There are many areas of responsibility where my reaction is we need more staff to be able to do this within a timely manner that's expected of us. I look at this process as part of our ordinary business, and it's part of what our responsibility is. It takes time, it takes a lot of expertise. So bringing on staff is part of the solution, but it's also really important that the staff that we have are given the time to learn what we do and a lot of the nuances and the importance of this work. And the staff we have are fantastic. It's an honor to work with this group of people. But looking forward, I think I appreciate the question, because I think as we go into the future, water resources are extraordinarily important for this state, and building out the staff for the division is going to be important. Thank you.
And thank you. And if I may ask a really quick follow-up, Chair. How many staff members do you currently have, especially based upon your closing comment of the, I guess, fluidity of places, and that it's not going to be the same in the different areas? How many staff members do you have working on this at this time? Do you know? Or you can also get back to us.
Staff members specifically working on this issue. It's a little hard to say. There's a lot of inner tie among our different sections and our field offices. Maybe there's a half a dozen people who have directly been involved in this particular case.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the answers.
Senator Gokachia?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Adam. I guess, you know, the thing that really concerns me, and we were at the water conference a month ago now, I guess, you know, and there were a number of attorneys there talking about it, and everybody seems to have a little bit of a difference of opinion. But, you know, I think the key point in the decision was it really reflects vested water rights. And this is what everything is. You really can't impair pre-statutory rights. And so that's what this decision seems to be really based on. And so I guess one thing that concerns me, we're 4 years out from hitting the deadline to file a statutory water right, a vested water right. And so really, where are we at until we have all our vested water right applications in place? And then the other thing clearly that really concerns me with this, and I'm just asking you for some discussion and kind of your position. I don't disagree. I don't think anyone disagrees. All your decisions have to be supported by science. But that's a problem, and I think that goes right back to what Vice Chair Anderson was talking about. How much staff are you going to need to come up with the science that keep you from losing in court? And that's where we are. So if you want to respond to that, or if there is a response, I'd appreciate it.
Adam Sullivan, for the record, yes, with regard to claims of vested right and adjudicating those rights, that's a heavy load and we share this with all Western states, really similar issues. The deadline is important because we're talking about rights that were established before any of us were alive. And as time goes on, we need to preserve those records and also understand what the commitments are or the claims to vested rights. So that deadline is important, and I appreciate you bringing it up because it's something that we are trying to really make publicly known. And if there are claims of vested rights that haven't filed a claim yet, they need to do so. Secondly, with regard to staffing and the baseline science and having that foundation to make good decisions on, also a really good point. We're making a lot of headway now with the Nevada Water Initiative, which is a combined effort between the Division of Water Resources, the USGS, Nevada Water Science Center, and DRI to really update the baseline science. We have a great foundation from work that was done primarily by the USGS in the mid-20th century. It's been tremendously beneficial to where we are now, but we know a lot more now, so we can do better. And I think the way to be responsive to that is to continue supporting the Nevada Water Initiative.
If I may add something, Melissa Flatley, for the record. First, about that science portion, this order came about as the result of a very robust hearing process with a lot of participation from the stakeholders and some very smart experts who shared a lot of really good information. And that's something that we've been working on developing in all of our hearings, is having more hearings, first of all, and working on developing those records to support the decisions that the state engineer is making. We do, as Mr. Sullivan said, we do have the expertise on our staff to further evaluate the science that the participants bring into the hearing. But I think having the opportunity for more of that information to be shared through the process is critical to making sure that we are getting supportable decisions. And that comes back to the Vice Chair's question on staffing and growing and supporting the division as well. Because right now I am the hearing officer. So that's, yes. And then second, I wanted to comment, Senator, on about the intent of this opinion to protect vested rights. It's really recognizing prior appropriation generally. I mean, seniority of water rights is the primary focus here in preventing conflict between those rights. They talk about vested rights here because that was what was at issue in the LWRFS, but I think we wouldn't be limited in conjunctive management where we are protecting any type of seniority process amongst rights. Thank you.
If I may,
Senator
Madam,
Gokachia, did you have a follow-up?
just real quick, maybe more of a comment and I think, we all, okay, the Supreme Court decision's out and we all ran over to pull it out. And I, like my colleague here to my right, I'm not an attorney, so boy, it says a lot and a lot's in the interpretation. But I think the decision is the Supreme Court decision is what it is, and it was unanimous, and we understand it. But really, I don't think it's still like most water law, still a little bit gray, a little bit ambiguous, and there's plenty of room to sue. And so the bottom line is, I think your comments are right on point. I don't know, we've got to render good decisions, and they've got to be, i.e. your shop, and I wouldn't want to take your job sideways, Adam. It's scary because you're going to get sued no matter what you do. It's just we have to have the ability, and you have to have the staff and the expertise and the science in place that you can win. And that's where we are right today. And I don't know what kind of numbers that's going to take. We're going back and working on 120 years of water law. Then we're going to go back even before that. We're going back to vested rights, and let's establish them. And I've said for a long time, a lot of your records, I know they're getting better and you're updating them, but a lot of those are old documents, and now we're going to pile some more on top as people start filing new vested. And the real bottom line is, yeah, it's a Supreme Court decision, and I don't think anyone disagrees. If you have the right science, yeah, you can. Groundwater does impact surface water if you've got enough science. Otherwise, you're going to end up in court and argue it again. So with that, any comment to that? I just, it's a great decision. Good luck in court. Thanks.
Is there a comment on Senator Gokachia's last question? And if not, then we'll go to Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
No, there isn't, Chair. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Chair. I get the privilege of following that one. So I, of course, this surprises no one, have two questions, but I'll start with the first one, which is in our committee last session, and not just last session, for many sessions, we've heard a lot about overpumping and over-allocating and these critical issues. And so I just wondered if you could speak to what kind of impact this decision might have on addressing those issues. And I know it's still early days yet.
Adam Sullivan, for the record. I think the way this decision helps is that it clarifies authorities of our office. But as far as responding to those issues, it's very site specific. It's really important to consider the hydrogeologic setting of different parts of the state. And so going forward, starting with baseline data, including public outreach and science communication, and a lot of public feedback about what the options are and what the constraints are and what water law allows is what we need to do over the long term to address those problems. So that's what we're doing within our resources, where there are the most acute problems now, and I think so this decision, it helps affirm that what we're doing is the right thing.
Thank you. And Chair, may I follow up with my second question?
Yes, after your second question, we will go to Assemblyman DeLong and then come back to Vegas. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So, because we're talking about water and we just want to make everything complicated, let me throw a wrench in the works, which is with this new decision, thinking about the basin boundaries and how long ago they were drawn and how much the science has changed, does this mean that we should look at redrawing those boundaries? And if yes, what would that process entail and what would you need to make that process happen?
Adam Sullivan, for the record. That is, I don't see that as an immediate priority. I mean, the boundaries are still valuable and important, and existing water rights are defined by what basin they're in. When we talk about changing those boundaries, it has to be done very carefully and with a lot of, again, public outreach and clarity about why that might need to be done and what the basis of that decision might be, and then what the impacts are. The boundaries were delineated in 1968 just based on topographic lines, but it's a really good basis for administering water rights and water law. So it's not something that we want to just dismiss and think we just need to update that. But it's a good reminder that the boundaries are just lines on a map based on topographic breaks and doesn't necessarily represent the potential for conflict or connectivity between different sources and different individual water rights.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Assemblyman DeLong.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the presentation. I'll start off by saying I'm not an attorney, but I find the case or the decision very interesting. The fact that it was unanimous is pretty definitive in my book. And I do think it brings clarity on certain issues, but I think on the flip side, it brings a lot of uncertainty depending on where you're talking about in the state. The clarity I think it provides is, yes, conjunctive management is statutorily authorized, and management of multiple basins is authorized. Depending on how that gets implemented in which part of the state, yes, has the ability to affect water rights, but it also has the ability to affect the economic activity in the state and providing jobs, providing tax revenue. And I think that's the discussion that has not been had. I'm not saying it's within your statutory jurisdiction, but from the legislation or the legislature's purview, that is an issue. And I don't have an answer. I'm just putting that out there because to me that's the elephant in the room that we don't have a way to deal with yet. So, as it relates to the basin boundaries, those basin boundaries are very applicable for surface water rights because surface water only flows within individual basins unless those basins are drawn across a river such as the Humboldt or the Lower White River flow system. But depending on the underlying geology, particularly in southern Nevada, you do have groundwater that flows between basin boundaries. And so that underlying geology is critical to understanding the groundwater system. So not really a question, just some food for thought for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblyman. Were there any comments from the state engineer, Ms. Flatley, regarding Assemblyman DeLong's comments before we move to Vegas?
Thank you, Chair. Melissa Flatley. I would just say, Assemblyman, that the Order 1309 was just the fact-finding part, and we are also struggling with those same management questions and what those tools are to address the consequences of the connected sources of water and the potential conflict between the rights. So that is an open question for us as well.
Chair, if I could just quickly follow up. I agree.
Yes.
How that this policy is implemented is going to be, the proof is going to be in the pudding, so to speak, on what happens in the lower White River flow system or any of the other basins or multiple basins that the state engineer is thinking about conjunctively managing.
Any follow-up from our presenters, or should we move to Vegas?
No follow-up, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I can't really see the table when I'm asking, so I just want to make sure that we have an open line of communication, and I thank you so much, BPS, for going back and forth and doing God's work here this morning. One point of notification, I guess or clarification I would make is on page 14 of the presentation. We mentioned AB 387, but it says 378 from 2023, just before I ask a question. That said, thank you so much because we really appreciated the presentation. I think there's been a lot of discussion around the Supreme Court decision, and it's so helpful to have a line of communication. I guess the question I would ask is if a Nevadan water right holder came to your team scared and concerned about potential curtailment based on looking at ground versus surface water rights and how this will be affected based on this ruling, what would you tell them?
For the record, Melissa Flatley, I think there are 2 points to respond to that. So first is that all rights are subject to existing rights. So at any point in time, any water right that's been issued is always subject to prior existing rights. And then second is that Order 1309 and the Supreme Court's decision didn't make any decisions about what effect what management decisions will come about as the effect of the water being connected. So at this point, there is no discussion of curtailment because right now we've only said the sources are connected. We don't know what the next steps will be to address the conflict between rights or how to manage the pumping of appropriated rights and use of surface water rights at this time.
As a broader comment, Adam Sullivan for the record, with regard to fear of curtailment, curtailment is something that's clearly allowed for in statute, but it's not the only way to resolve conflict. And we need to be open to locally driven concepts for how to do it in better ways that are less harmful to the local economy and the water users and the communities that depend on water rather than just strict curtailment by priority. I see that as a last resort. And I think it's important to consider other alternatives.
Thank you so much. I think that will hopefully ease the mind of some water right holders who may be concerned in light of the recent verdict about what this means for them. Change can always be scary, especially when it comes to water, which I've learned over the course of the last year chairing natural resources. Do we have any other questions here in Las Vegas? All right. Any other questions, Assemblyman Gurr or in Carson City? All right. With that, we thank you so much for your presentation. We really appreciate the open line of communication, having you come out and speak with us. And I'm sure more questions will arise, and we look forward to speaking with you in the future. But for now, we will end item number 5 on the agenda. And thank you so much again for the presentation. And we will open up item 6 on the agenda, the presentation on efforts around the country to address per and polyfluoroalkyl substances and micro and nanoplastics. I probably completely mispronounced that, but our next 2 agenda items pertain to PFAS. As many of you likely recall, last session we did pass Senate Bill 76, sponsored by Senator Neal, which would have, amongst other things, prohibited the sale and distribution of certain products containing intentionally added PFAS. The bill was vetoed, but we'd heard during our last meeting, PFAS legislation continues to be an area of interest to state legislatures around the country. We've learned that these are chemicals that stick around forever, and it's why they're called the forever chemicals, and that they're prevalent in a wide variety of products from carpeting to food packaging to weather-resistant coatings and rubber and plastics. In the interest of continuing to learn more about PFAS, I want to take up this topic during the interim. So to that effect, we'll first hear from Ms. Julia Meltzer, the Zero Waste Coordinator with the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators, who will be speaking primarily about PFAS and other states' efforts pertaining to PFAS, as well as other emerging contaminants such as micro and nanoplastics. I believe that Ms. Meltzer may be joining us, and I see her now via Zoom. Please go ahead. When you're ready, introduce yourself for the record, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Great, thank you so much for having me today. Shall I go ahead and share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much for having me today and inviting me to speak. And today I will be speaking about PFAS and state legislation. And as you mentioned, my name is Julia Meltzer, and I'm the Zero Waste Coordinator at NCEL. NCEL is the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators, and we are a nationwide network of more than 1,200 state legislators that coordinates shared learning and action on environmental issues. We connect legislators between states and with experts to share solutions and best practices. We are also nonpartisan, and we like to call ourselves the remote environmental staff. And our work consists of extensive outreach, state and regional events, and a national forum that brings together roughly 150 legislators from across the country. NCL works on 4 program areas, and they include climate and energy, conservation, environmental health, and oceans. I'm part of the environmental health team, and that team focuses on issues pertaining to sustainable agriculture, water quality, zero waste, plastic pollution, and toxic chemical exposure. Environmental justice is incorporated throughout our program's work, and I have a special focus on it as I track environmental justice and cumulative impacts policy. So, what are PFAS? Well, as you mentioned, they are per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and the EPA has identified more than 12,000 types. They are human-made, and they've been used widely since the 1940s. And some of their key properties that have made them so popular are that they are heat, stain, water, and oil resistant, as well as colorless, odorless, and tasteless, which leads to our challenge in detecting them. And of course, they're known colloquially as forever chemicals because they do not break down in the environment. And as you mentioned, there are major sources of exposure. Some of those include consumer products, food, and drinking water. And they're linked to a number of negative health impacts, including cancer, immune system disruption, reduced fertility, thyroid disease, and liver damage. So when we look at defining PFAS, they're generally defined as a class, and PFAS chemicals share a common trait, chains of carbon surrounded by fluorine, and that bond is very strong, which is what makes them difficult to break down. And as you're aware, Nevada AB 97 a few years ago defined PFAS as a class of fluorinated organic chemicals that contain at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom. And defining PFAS as a class really helps avoid regrettable substitutions, since there are literally thousands of types of PFAS. So in this context, and despite broad consensus on this definition, I just want to point out that there is a national push to change the definition of PFAS so certain manufacturers can continue using them in their products. For example, Indiana currently has a bill that would change the definition of PFAS. So this is something to keep an eye on. As far as microplastics and nanoplastics, of course, they have an overlap with PFAS, but microplastics and nanoplastics are just small sizes of plastic. And microplastics are essentially less than 5 millimeters long. And some of those sources that you will find microplastics in are paint, personal care products, plastic pellets, textiles, and vehicle tire dust. California is really a leader in regulating microplastics, and they have adopted a microplastic strategy. I encourage you to check that out if you're interested. There are at least 2 states, Michigan and Rhode Island, that are looking at policy this year that would restrict intentionally added microplastics in products like cleaners and cosmetics. And just to touch on nanoplastics, they're simply smaller ever smaller pieces of plastic, which are too small to be identified by the human eye, and they're 1 micrometer and under. So plastics just continue to break down in ever smaller pieces. Nanoplastics have not really entered into the policy realm yet. As far as PFAS exposure, this is a really great visual that gives you a sense of how all of these aspects are interconnected. And basically, food, air, water have been contaminated globally as a result of manufacturing releases and the use of PFAS-containing products. And so, as I mentioned, we're exposed to PFAS in food as we see it kind of moves through the agricultural system, from indoor air and dust as it's in residential homes, and in many cases, drinking water. To get a sense of the state policy over a number of years, we have this map, which gives you an idea of how widespread PFAS policy is. And 33 states have introduced 243 policies to protect people from these toxics, and 28 states have adopted 139 policies. And this is from Safer States, which is a partner organization. They have a lot of excellent information on PFAS. As for the state policy outlook for 2024, again, this is from Safer States, and there are at least 35 states that are looking to address PFAS this year. And the analysis from Safer States suggests that PFAS could be banned in more uses than ever in 2024. As we look at phasing out PFAS, the broadest policies that phase it out in multiple sectors are in Maine and Minnesota. And these laws require disclosure of PFAS in all consumer products and ban PFAS in all products unless the use is necessary for public health or the functioning of society, and alternatives are currently unavailable. Then as we move into more specific regulation of PFAS, this one you are surely familiar with, firefighting foam and gear. And so there are different levels of regulation within that. 12 states have put in place bans on the sale of firefighting foam containing PFAS. Then we have 8 states that require a disclosure on personal protective equipment. And then 3 states have banned the incineration of firefighting foam. Another important category is textiles. And there are 8 states that have eliminated PFAS in various textile categories. And again, these can range from clothing, apparel, to items in the home, from carpets to textile treatments to upholstered furniture. Another category, which you'll be discussing later, is water. The EPA has proposed drinking water standards for 6 PFAS chemicals. I believe those will be coming out in the coming months. 10 states have adopted maximum contaminant levels or enforceable standards for PFAS in drinking water. And I highlight here the example of New Hampshire, because not only did they set maximum contaminant levels, but they enabled the Department of Environmental Services to make grants and loans to eligible municipalities, drinking water and wastewater systems to address the contamination. So that financial component is a notable addition. And then as we look at some of the other categories that are coming into view, there are 6 states that have eliminated PFAS chemicals in cosmetics. 12 states have enacted phase outs of PFAS in food packaging. And then another area that is emerging is the topic of PFAS in sewage sludge, also known as biosolids. And Maine is the leader in that. They're the first in the nation to ban the spreading of sludge and sludge-derived compost as fertilizer. And looking ahead, again, we're going to see more PFAS legislation covering a broad range of products, from artificial turf to cookware, which is likely where many of you first heard of PFAS, in Teflon, cleaning products, food packaging, kids products, menstrual products, textiles, including apparel, waxes, and polishes, and many more. And one of the key things to note is to really create a stronger PFAS policy, it's important to capture manufacturing, not just the sale of those items within bans. And that is all. Thank you so much for your time. And here is my contact information. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or would like to go into some more depth on these topics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Meltzer. This was so informational and informative for all of us. I believe we do have a question in Carson City from Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this presentation. My question is about the federal level. I know we can't seem to rely on the feds to do a whole lot these days, but has there been anything done or looked at on a federal level to address this issue?
Yes, starting in 2021, the federal government came out with a PFAS strategic roadmap. And that's where they laid out this timeline for starting to regulate PFAS levels in drinking water, which I mentioned those new standards are likely to come out. I believe the deadline is September. So it's mostly in terms of drinking water at the federal level thus far. So that's why you see a lot of these states going into more of the other categories.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the committee? You were just that informative. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate the presentation. And unless I see any last minute questions, which I don't believe I do, then we thank you for your presentation. And we are going to continue discussing PFAS on item 7 on the agenda. And we'll close out item 6 and thank Ms. Meltzer again for informative presentation and NCL for gathering so much great data for us. And this will be a presentation on efforts in Nevada to address per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. We have Jennifer Carr, Administrator of Nevada's Division of Environmental Protection, and Andrea Seifert, Bureau Chief, Bureau of Safe Drinking Water, joining us from Carson City. Whenever you're ready, please introduce yourselves and proceed with the presentation. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Chairwoman Pezzina, Vice Chair Anderson, and members of the committee. For the record, I am Jennifer Carr, C-A-R-R, Administrator for the Division of Environmental Protection. I'm accompanied this morning, as was mentioned, by Andrea Seifert, Chief of the NDP Bureau of Safe Drinking Water. The last presentation did lay a bit of a baseline of information for us, so we'll segue into what NDEP is doing. So we are going to provide updates this morning on what we'll just call PFAS in Nevada, and we'll answer any questions, obviously, that any of the members may have. PFAS has been discussed in this legislative body actively, at least for the last 2 sessions. And as has also been mentioned this morning, we're fine with calling them forever chemicals as well, because that's what the American lingo is these days. PFAS does touch many areas of NDEP, but today we'll largely talk about efforts in the water sector, as it is the current focus of federal regulatory activity. But it does potentially impact a number of our bureaus in the program. So, for a timeline of what we've been doing, Nevada activities started by the US EPA in 2013 as part of a monitoring effort that they did under the Federal Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule for PFAS. From the 2013 to 2015 monitoring that was done, There were no detections of PFAS in drinking water at the sites that were tested and at the analytical accuracy that laboratories could achieve at that time. So it was good news for us. Between 2016 and 2021, there was a significant amount of activity nationally to address PFAS. Some of these national efforts included enhancing laboratory methods to analyze PFAS and detect their presence at lower levels, finding options for treating PFAS, researching public health risks, and work toward developing federal regulations, as was mentioned by the last presenter. Following passage of Assembly Bill 97 here in Nevada in 2021, and using the US EPA PFAS grant funding that we had achieved at that time, NDP had created and managed a PFAS stakeholder working group to engage a very wide variety of individuals, and we produced what is now the PFAS Action Plan in June of 2022. The action plan aided NDP in focusing future efforts. In 2022 and 2023, using the PFAS Action Plan, NDP has focused resources in 4 key areas: research and pursuit of federal grant funding options for NDP's work, as well as funding to benefit the regulated drinking water systems who will have to address PFAS. We've been sampling for PFAS in Nevada water and wastewaters. We've been staying abreast of analytical methods and certified laboratories for PFAS analysis, and we've been working with utilities in response to PFAS findings that have started to emerge with the new sampling effort. In response to the federal bipartisan infrastructure law, NDP has applied for various grants and will continue to do so. Awarded bill grants will be administered by different bureaus within NDP. And it's notable that current grant awards to NDP for addressing emerging contaminants as a group, which include PFAS, our grants, 3 grants currently total over $61 million to help us address this issue in Nevada. At this time, I will turn the remaining portion of the presentation to Andrea Seifert, Chief of the NDP Bureau of Safe Drinking Water.
Good morning. For the record, I am Andrea Seifert, S-E-I-F-E-R-T. Developing the PFAS Action Plan allowed NDEP to bring stakeholders from multiple agencies, academia, and national organizations to the table to review research and discuss potential sources of PFAS contamination. Through sharing of knowledge, it was determined that Nevada has no known manufacturing of PFAS compounds, so PFAS environmental impacts are most likely due to their ubiquitous use. This includes discharges from wastewater treatment plants, leaching from landfills, runoff from areas where aqueous film-forming foam was used, and industrial waste. The discharges eventually make it to the groundwater and surface water bodies, which are oftentimes sources of drinking water. In Nevada, sources that are likely to be contributing to PFAS contamination are wastewater treatment plants, septic systems, land application of biosolids, leaching from landfills, industrial waste, air emissions from industrial processes, and the historical use of AFFF at Department of Defense sites and airports. In 2022, Nevada had limited resources to begin reconnaissance sampling across the state to determine the extent of PFAS contamination. To maximize the federal grant money available, a sample prioritization tool was developed to identify initial sampling locations throughout the state that may be susceptible to PFAS contamination. The maps display the locations identified for sampling. The larger and darker dots indicate a higher potential for contamination based on the tool outputs. To rank the sampling priority, NDEP compared drinking water protection areas with locations of waste discharges and permitted facilities with the potential to use or release PFAS products. A score was given to each regulated drinking water source and ranked from highest to lowest, with 12 points being the highest calculated value. These locations were then overlaid with water bodies like lakes and streams, and wastewater facilities in the identified drinking water protection areas. The correlated water bodies and wastewater locations were added to the list. Those locations with 5 to 12 points were prioritized for voluntary sampling, which included 167 drinking water sites, 67 surface water bodies, and 52 wastewater sites. On the maps, you can see representative sites across the state were identified. And as shown in the maps on the right-hand side of the slide, there were a larger number of sites in the more heavily populated parts of the state, being the Reno, Sparks, and Las Vegas areas. The sampling in 2023 has provided NDEP and the regulated community with initial insight into the presence of PFAS across the state. There were 2 sources of data for the public water systems collected in 2023. First, US EPA scheduled specific water systems to collect samples under the Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule number 5, or UCMR 5. Secondly, under an NDEP contract using federal money, additional samples were collected at sites identified from the sample prioritization tool. Between the UCMR 5 and contractor sampling, 103 sources have been monitored at 31 public water systems. 9 sources show detections of PFAS in their groundwater wells. Of these, 5 sources are above a proposed PFAS standard, and these 5 sources impact 4 public water systems. Only 1 public water system has all sources indicating results above a proposed PFAS standard, the Canyon GID water system, which has been in the local press recently. These results have provided NDEP the opportunity to work with local water utilities to address the next steps for their water systems. Some water systems have begun the process of notifying their customers and/or are looking at funding options to mitigate PFAS in the drinking water. For surface water bodies, there are 18 locations showing detections of PFAS. However, the results are below the draft aquatic life ambient water quality criteria. For wastewater, all but 1 location showed detections of PFAS. Sample sites included both influent and effluent samples from wastewater treatment plants. Detections are not surprising because wastewater treatment plants are not currently designed to remove PFAS, and PFAS consumer products are ubiquitous in our households. As noted previously, one source of PFAS contamination in the state is the use of AFFF products. Class B firefighting foams are commercial surfactant solutions designed and used to combat Class B flammable fuel fires, especially fires involving petroleum products or other flammable liquids. Class B foams can be divided into 2 categories: fluorinated foams that contain PFAS and fluorine-free foams, or F3, that do not contain PFAS. AB 97, passed in the 2021 legislative session, generally prohibits the discharge, use, or release of Class B firefighting foam that contains intentionally added PFAS for the purpose of testing or firefighting training, and requires reporting of discharges, uses, or releases of PFAS-containing Class B firefighting foams to NDEP. Inventories of AFFF products containing PFAS have been reported to the State Emergency Response Commission, or SERC. NDEP does not have a role in establishing an AFFF take-back program, but several states have initiated such activity, and discussion on this topic has begun through the SERC. So, moving into the future, NDEP has 4 focus areas: investigate, respond, prepare, and protect. To investigate, NDEP has additional contracts in process to expand sampling for PFAS and to develop a risk assessment tool to identify drinking water sources not impacted by PFAS and to predict which drinking water sources may be impacted by PFAS contamination. To respond, NDEP has identified funding opportunities and is beginning the process to enter into subgrants, contracts, and loan agreements with public water systems to develop engineering reports and infrastructure plans to mitigate PFAS contamination. To prepare, NDEP program staff are utilizing federal grants to prepare for a new PFAS final rule, which is anticipated to be released by US EPA this year. Additionally, efforts are being made to build analytical laboratory capacity for PFAS analysis. Staff continue to track and participate in federal rulemaking process. They are coordinating with other states and national associations to stay abreast of current research on PFAS on analytical methods, treatment technologies, and health effects. And to protect, NDEP is developing strategies to protect drinking water sources from PFAS contamination. One specific effort is related to PFAS release reporting. Outreach to the regulated community will be conducted in the first quarter of 2024, according to the information provided in the PFAS Action Plan. This outreach will be in the form of a mass email to introduce the reporting requirements and to set a date for a virtual workshop to further explain the agency's expectations for PFAS release reporting and follow-up. At a minimum, it will be mandatory to report any use or release of Class B firefighting foams containing PFAS and any release of PFAS to surface waters. We appreciate the committee's interest in NDEP's efforts related to PFAS, and we are now available for comments and questions.
Thank you so much to you both for the presentation, to Ms. Carr and to Ms. Seifert. We really appreciated it. We do have some questions, and we will get started, I think, with Assemblyman DeLong. I believe he has a couple questions in Carson City, and then we'll go to Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch in Carson City, and then we'll come back to Las Vegas with Assemblywoman Considine.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the presentation. Very informative. I'd like to hear what you had to say. So 2 quick questions. One is, are any of the labs that are currently analyzing for PFAS at the detection limits that you're looking for, are they Nevada certified?
Andrea Seifert, for the record, yes, we do have Nevada certified labs. None of the laboratories are in Nevada, but we do certify for drinking water at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. And then the second question, has there been any sampling done at the Stead Airport, which is a former military base?
Andrea Seifert, for the record, not from a drinking water source, but there are some samples in the general area that were included in the initial sampling, and I am aware that there have been other sample efforts by other entities outside of NDEP.
Thank you.
Jennifer Carr, for the record, I'll add to that as well. Remember when I mentioned that this PFAS issue will touch many parts of NDEP. NDEP also oversees environmental issues related to the Department of Defense out of our Bureau of Corrective Actions. And that program has been engaged with the Department of Defense on various facilities throughout Nevada, and there is data associated with those facilities.
Anything more, Assemblyman DeLong?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We're going to stay in Carson City and go to Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, and then we're going to come back to Vegas for Assemblywoman Considine.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for your presentation today. So my question is on the sample results slide, and it said that there was a proposed standard of 4 public water system, and I just wondered what got you to that level of 4? Was there a certain study or consultation, or was 4 just chosen randomly? If you could explain that process a little bit, that'd be great.
Andrea Seifert for the record. Thank you for the question. And I'm going to make sure, I may be making an assumption, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But so there were 103 sources that were monitored. So of those 103, there were 4 public water systems that are indicating results above the new PFAS proposed standards. So I guess the way we got there is related to directly to the sample, the analytical results, and so that there's one water system that has detections at 2 wells, and so I'm not sure if the question's related to the 5 versus the 4, or...
That was the question, it's the 5 versus the 4.
Yeah, so the 5 is related to 5 wells. 3 of them are kind of in the Reno-Sparks area, and then one of them's in the Elko area, and another one of them's down in the Las Vegas area. But there are 2 sources at one public water system that have detections.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you so much. Assemblywoman, did you have any follow-up questions, or were you good?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Assemblywoman Considine?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation on this. My question is on slide 6, having to do with the fire departments and the inventories of the AFFF. Maybe one too many Fs. There's a mention on here about disposal. So I'm curious if we know what that disposal process is. One of the things that I've been learning is that when we think that we contract with entities who dispose of things, they are really just repackaging and selling it. So I know if we don't have a disposal process here yet and we're doing it, and we're looking at how other states are doing it, are we understanding what their disposal process is?
Thank you very much for the question, Assemblywoman Considine. Jennifer Carr for the record. So you touch on a really interesting aspect of this overarching issue, which is the forever nature of these chemicals. And so there is a lot of discussion right now nationally about what it means to dispose of or destroy PFAS. And so it is very hard to break down. Even with mechanical methods or chemical methods for treatment. And so we certainly don't necessarily want to take PFAS from one media and just put it in another, in a different place. And so disposal is certainly a question. The take-back programs are working to resolve those. We are tracking those issues with the other states, as well as the discussion that's going on at the CERC, the State Environmental Response Commission. And I think there's more to come on that, but it's definitely a hot topic in this sector right now. It's actually what to do with the PFAS once you've got a hold of it.
All right, thank you so much. I believe Senator Goicoechea, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just looking at the slide, and we're talking about the firefighting foam. And on your slide, though, it shows a non-detect, I believe, there at Carlin on the surface water. And clearly, we had the Fire Academy upstream 3-4 miles, significant foam there used, I believe, over the years. And yet we've got a non-detect, as per the slide, in Carlin. So I know, okay, it's speculation, but I would have thought if there was going to be a detect coming out of that fire academy, it should have happened. I know we had some issues there when it was performing as a fire academy. But it looks clean. The contamination appears to be farther upstream.
Andrea Seifert for the record. Thank you for that question. And it's one that we've been wondering about and why it was located as one of our high priority sites to monitor at. My recollection is they are served water from a spring that may be above the location of where the firefighting training academy was located, but we were happy to see the results. And additional sampling will likely be taking place in and around those areas, and we'll be able to confirm what we found.
Yeah, I'm pleased to see it as well. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions from Carson City or Vegas or from Assemblyman Gurr? Okay. I did have one final question, and I was looking at the slide with the monitoring results. I don't remember what slide number that was, but I had a question. If there were two questions. One is if there were any considerable results in any of the public drinking water locations or sources, and two, if the people in those areas were notified if there was a considerable concern in regards to PFAS.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Andrea Seifert for the record. So considerable results. I would, we're highlighting the 5 where they had the detections above a proposed standard. And so we have been in communication with those 5 public water systems. Because there's no federal requirement for public notification, which is our way of requiring a public water system to provide that notification, in some ways it's been voluntary. But the One Water System, Canyon GID, we worked with that utility to develop a public outreach and communication tool, and they were very receptive to that and have notified their customers. Of all the results, theirs were the highest, and both of their sources were high, which means all of the water going out to the community in that location was containing PFAS at some concerning levels. The other utilities have multiple sources that they can manage. I am aware the Small Homeowners Association in the Las Vegas area did notify their customers as well. And Truckee Meadows Water Authority makes their data available to their customers. I'm not sure what information has gone out in the city of Elko in their one source that was high.
Thank you so much. And in the area that was higher, were mitigation techniques taken into place to try to lower it for the people living in that area who source their water there?
Andrea Seifert for the record. Thank you again for that question. We are in communication with them. Mitigating the PFAS isn't an overnight strategy or something they can do very quickly. So they are working with an engineering firm right now and working with us to get a sub-grant to pay for their engineering services to start treating the water. And we will be, and they informed their customers of this, products on the market that are certified to remove PFAS. And so they have notified their customers that there's like water pitcher filters and point of use devices that they could put on their faucets to help alleviate those interim concerns until they can get a full treatment installed and or a new source found.
Chair Pizzina, if I might add, Jennifer Carr for the record. Sure. I would imagine that some of these responses at this point in time might seem a little less than satisfactory because we are in a little bit of a state of limbo where EPA has proposed values for future drinking water standards, yet they haven't put out the final rule to adopt them yet. We are under the belief that that publication of that rule is relatively imminent. We're a little surprised it hasn't come out yet. And then, as was mentioned in the going forward slide, when it is published, Nevada will, as it always does, is look at those standards and look at adopting them by reference into our regulations, at which point then various timelines start to accrue where we have the ability to regulate it and have activities that are driven by regulation as opposed to voluntary responses. So we're getting there. It is imminent. And then, so we hope to see some activity in 2024 in that regard, both at the federal level and then following up at the state level with amendments to the Nevada Administrative Code.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your responses and look forward to seeing where we can be soon with mitigation techniques. Assemblyman Gurr, I believe you had your hand raised as well.
You're on mute.
I needed to unmute. I apologize. Not used to this very well. As with most of these hearings, the more questions are asked, the more answers are given, the more questions arise. But back early in the presentation, there was a comment about $61 million and then additional grants and things. I kind of missed whether or not it was $61 million for grants, for people to mitigate these or research them. And then past that, how do you mitigate PFAS problems? We've not heard, or at least I've not heard of any problems in Elko and any mitigation going on. So if there's a possibility to even come close to answering those, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Andrea Seifert for the record, and thank you again for that question. Yes, there are treatment technologies to address PFAS contamination in drinking water. So the technologies that are out there and mostly used are using granular activated carbon, ion exchange, and reverse osmosis. And so these are the types of technologies that are in some of these home units that you can get. The GAC, or granular activated carbon, is very common in water pitchers. And then reverse osmosis, there are small units that you can have at a household level. But for public water systems, those are the same types of technologies that their engineers would be looking at. The easiest way to mitigate is also to just stop using a source if that's a viable option for a water system. So like I said, some of our water systems have a lot of sources. Tumwa, maybe has like 30 water sources, and they're and the Truckee River on top of that, and then Elko, has 10 to 20 wells that they could utilize. So those are some of the other mitigation strategies, and this risk assessment tool that we're trying to develop will also, I think, help us locate areas where maybe a new well could be drilled that's not in an area influenced by PFAS contamination. So I hope that answers your question.
And Jennifer Carr, for the record, you mentioned the $61 million that has been awarded to NDEP at this point from US EPA. $18.9 million of that is for Andrea's program directly to the Bureau of Safe Drinking Water to address emerging contaminants, and two other grants at approximately $21 million apiece coming through our state revolving fund, which we've talked a lot about over the years here in the legislature. So that's our infrastructure financing program. And these are specific pots of money within the state revolving fund that are to be used to address emerging contaminants. So that's where the $61 million comes from.
Thank you for that answer. I appreciate it. The thing about having alternate water sources, in a community the size of Elko, we have 10 or 12 wells and they're pumping all the time. And now out in Spring Creek, where we've got, 5 or 6. The last estimate I heard on re-drilling or even drilling a new well was somewhere north of $2 million a well. So is that a possibility that there's a fund to help do that if PFAS is causing problems?
Thank you, Andrea Seifert, for the record. Yes, currently we have funds available to drill new wells at $2 million. And it's either grant money or sub-grants, basically 100% that we could issue, and or loans with principal forgiveness money.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much. Any other questions from Carson City or from Las Vegas? All right, seeing none, we thank you so much for your presentation, Ms. Carr, Ms. Seifert. I think we all understand the concerns inherent in forever chemicals, and we really appreciate your taking the time to present to us today. As a reminder, we did actually have number 8 on our presentation from the University of Nevada, Reno a little bit earlier in the day, so we don't need to hear that again, which will move us to number 9, I believe, on our presentation list, which is the presentation on regenerative agricultural practices. So we would love to hear from Wendy Millett, the ranch director of Tomcat Ranch, joining us on this presentation, and Ms. Millett will be joining us on Zoom. When you're ready, we'd love to have you go ahead and introduce yourself for the record. Thank you so much, Ms. Millett.
Thank you. Can you see me on my screen okay this morning?
Yes, and thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, good. Wendy Millett, M-I-L-L-E-T. I'm the director at Tomcat Ranch in Pescadero, California. And I'm very grateful for the chance to learn about some of the very complicated issues in Nevada. So thanks for the learning opportunity this morning. I'm going to share a little bit about what we're working on in California, but this is not a California-specific effort. We're calling it regenerative agriculture, and it's a movement around the world to do agriculture in a way that is in harmony with nature. And I'm going to just share with you some of the insights that I'm seeing from around the world. But before I get started on that, just a quick rundown about who we are. So Tomcat Ranch is a 1,800-acre grass-fed beef working cattle ranch out on the coast of California, about an hour south of San Francisco. We actually also are a learning lab and educational ranch, and we have 3 program areas. One is about the practices on the ground. One of them is about our work to change the food system. And one of them is our work in gathering people together to educate and learn together. We're really crazy excited about the possibilities of regenerative agriculture because we are seeing in so many places around the world where it's solving not one problem, but it's solving multiple problems. And that goes from everything from increasing climate stability to addressing rural economics, quality of the food, nutrient density, water infiltration, soil, animal welfare, biodiversity, food security. It sounds a little bit too good to be true, perhaps, but I can happily tell you it's not too good to be true. It's happening in so many places, and it's yet still probably only 3 to 5% of producers in the US is a best estimate. So we've got a lot to learn and a lot to share. I'm going to try and walk you through it for those of you who may not be familiar with it. Some people call it climate smart agriculture. There's a lot of different names and a lot of buzzwords. And there's also a lot of ways to talk about it. I'm going to try and break it down into one way that we're talking about it is just focusing on a way of raising food in a way that actually is improving some of nature's cycles. So breaking it down to 4 cycles: water, energy, carbon, mineral, and the community dynamics. There's lots of ways we could break it down, but for purposes of showing you a little bit of what I'm talking about, I'm going to stick with that today. And happily, there's so many signs of distress for our planet right now, and I don't have to tell you, all of us in the West are very familiar with the drought, flood, fire dynamics, but in other places around the world, we're seeing it constantly in the news: temperature extremes, biodiversity loss, and food scarcity. My background's actually in conservation, and when I moved into agriculture, what made me very excited is that I think that there's a way that we can actually, as humans, interact with the environment and help rebalance the cycles and fix the ecosystems and build resilience to these planetary imbalances. So we've got a lot of work with scientists, and we got to hear from some great folks earlier on a bunch of topics, but science is so key to our work in understanding planetary systems. So Point Blue Conservation Science is a global conservation organization based out in California, and they've been with us for about 14 years. So a lot of what I'm sharing with you is peer-reviewed by them. And apologies if you all know this, but I'm going to just make sure that we're all on the same page, talking about some core principles for regenerative agriculture, or one could say for talking about soil health, which soil health is really the basis for regenerative agriculture. This is just a simplified version from General Mills, a big company that's taken interest in regenerative agriculture. The first single most important one is understanding context. So what I'm telling you from California, or what you know in your Nevada context, you heard it about your water basins, is we're talking about ecology, and they really vary by place to place. But as was heard by a little bit earlier, also minimizing soil disturbance is a huge principle of maximizing crop diversity, and this actually is diversity above ground, below ground. We get a lot talking about soil microbes and the gut microbes in the human biome, keeping the soil covered, maintaining living year-round roots, and integrating livestock where appropriate. There's so many fun things to show you, and usually I like to have people out at the ranch to talk about it. So I'm going to try and bring a little visual into a meeting room. This is a video that will take a little bit too much time, but I'm happy to share it at another time. The kind of key takeaway is at the top, you've got two kinds of grazing systems. One you can see on the right-hand side, it's got a lot of grass. And that is a regenerative grazing program. And then one is a more mainstream grazing program where there's much less grass. And what you're seeing, of course, is how much runoff is happening and how much water is being infiltrated into the soil. And it's really all about the power of grass and forage and biodiversity above ground and below ground to make use of water. We have another term that's very common in the regenerative agriculture movement, which I think all of us in water-strained places really have to pay attention to. And we call it effective rainfall. Again, apologies, you may all know this, but I want to make sure I've covered it. Non-effective rainfall is all too common, where our water is falling on ground that is hot, it's compacted, there's not a lot of vegetation, it's running off, there's not enough vegetation to hold the water, there's not enough biology in the soil to use the water, and that's what you're seeing on the left-hand side. In contrast, the effective rainfall, same amount of rain, but when the rain falls, it actually is caught by these plants, and it's held in the soil by microbes and by the deep plant roots. And so it's quite amazing to see that we're actually seeing places where rain is water cycles are being reinvigorated because plants actually transpire moisture into the environment and help create a rain cycle. You've seen plenty of this in your very hot areas of your state. Bare soil is kind of a disaster for our planet. It heats up, it loses water, it can't support plants, and it can't cool the earth. And in contrast, that lower photograph, when you've got a lot of green grass or green plants, it does all the opposite, and it's supporting plant life. Obviously, it's feeding animals, and it's helping to cool the planet. If you took measurements of the soil temperature at the ground level on these two different pictures, wherever they might be. And it could be just even at a single ranch where you've got a place that has a lot of cover versus not. You'll see a dramatic difference in the temperature at the soil surface. That's so important for our ability to hold water, our ability to grow plants. A little bit of a difference, just looking at grazing practices, integrating livestock being one of our central principles. If you're familiar with these, what they call fence line shots, where you see different grazing practices, the names are the names. Lots of people call it different things, so I hope you don't get too caught up in that. But I think the key is getting these principles activated where we have our ecosystems healthy and thriving. And if we can use livestock to do that, that's a plus. I wanted to touch on economic stability. It's a key part of why we're really supporting regenerative agriculture, because we're seeing places around the world where it's not just that producers are making more, and I'm saying farmers and ranchers, although our specialty is ranching, where we're seeing them making more money, but we're also seeing them reducing costs, which is so critical. A couple of key highlights from the ranch. I know you're the Natural Resources Committee, so I'm thrilled to share some of the findings from our science team. We've seen a great increase in our perennial grasses and our forbs. The timeline that you see is when we changed our grazing program to a adaptive grazing program. We've increased native perennial grasses across all the pastures on the ranch over the duration of the time that we have been doing the different grazing program. And we've restored a lot of biodiversity, because there's a lot of the ranch, when you do regenerative grazing, your animals move sort of mimicking the Serengeti, if you will, and they're moving all together in a herd, and they're moving, grazing at high density at a place, and then moving on. And so there's a lot of our ranch that's left open all the rest of the year when the herds moved off to different parts of the ranch. And meanwhile, those water tanks are still sitting there, and you can see all of our friends who come back to the to use the water systems, and generally to use the ranch, not just the water systems, but the grass that's left behind, because we leave quite a lot of grass behind for our native species neighbors. Again, lots of focus on soil health, and we've increased soil health on a whole bunch of the test plots. I'm just going to go because time goes fast. I wanted to just underscore photosynthesis. It sounds sometimes like a fourth grade science lesson, but photosynthesis is so key to making these systems work. And so we have a lot of conversations in our world, in our policy world, about carbon, but plants don't grow, carbon doesn't get sequestered if we don't support living plants. A lot of possible improvements if we just had 1 million acres. We did some rough numbers on what you could do if you increase the soil organic matter by 1% in an acre of soil. You could increase the water holding capacity by, estimates are 20 to 27,000 gallons an acre. So do a little math in Nevada and you'll think about the possibility there. And there's a lot of different practices, again, respectful of time. You've got this in your slide deck, but this is just a visual to show about how we're really trying to reactivate the whole system: carbon, photosynthesis, water, deep soil roots. There's lots of different practices. They're all geared towards the same: activating the cycles, feeding the soil health. The more practices you do, this one, the more impact happens over time. And some highlights of some practices we're doing: goat grazing, integrating livestock with farming fields. Sorry to go quickly. And just wanted to end with just a few amazing places. I know you have a lot of desert spaces in Nevada. Here's in Mexico, a place, these are neighbors' ranches, one that's doing regenerative agriculture on the right, one that's not. Les Plateau in China took on a huge regenerative agriculture project. Look at, you're bringing back life systems to our planet. South Africa, same thing. They're just everywhere, and they're in dry climates, not just wet, although places that are wet are going to do much better at building their soil health more quickly and sequestering more carbon and storing more water. This is a place in Utah. All of the species, except for the mule deer, increased here, not just their grazing cows, but their mule deer, their elk, their antelope, their moose, their birds. So it's supporting the ecosystem, not just for humans and for the food that they're raising, but for the native species at the same time. So quick buzz through regenerative agriculture. I'm happy to answer questions today or another day. There's my email. And thank you for the chance to share what we're working on.
Thank you so much, Ms. Millett. This was really interesting, and I enjoyed the presentation. I think the side-by-side photos of where the regenerative agriculture was happening and where it wasn't were really stunning. I believe we do have a question from Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch in Carson City.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for talking to us today about all of these practices. I personally grew up on a ranch, so this is very close to my heart, and I appreciate that you're highlighting this need. And so you did mention, obviously all of the benefits we get from this, and there are numerous. There's economic, there's climate, there's wildlife, water, cooling. But I do know it is a process, especially for people that have been operating family ranches or family farms, especially for some time. So what kind of supports do folks need to make that adjustment and that transition to regenerative practices?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. Plenty, right? And that's the part that we're working on as an educational ranch. There's definitely knowledge to share through technical assistance programs. And there are funding programs that are needed. Healthy Soils program is a big one in our state and about 26 states that are supporting the practices, and whether it's electric fencing that people need or whether it's water systems. Just all of that kind of support that they need financially, but also information. Networks of people to learn from, right? Because we're all in our context trying to understand what's right for our various places. And so these learning networks are key. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen. We like to think it's a journey, and so not saying that people need to start and do it all at once. A lot of times we just suggest to people who are curious about this is, try it in a part of your ranch and see if it's making a difference, and be patient with how long it takes. And there is also some timeline that it takes where a lot of people, from an economic standpoint, farmers and ranchers, concerned about the short-term change and if it's a cost to them until their soil biology starts improving. And so whether that's through programs that the state's supporting or the federal government, there's just increasing interest in programs happily to connect farmers and ranchers to provide that support they need. It's critical. I'm glad you raised it.
Thank you so much. And just to clarify, you said there's 16 states that currently have a soil health program, and there's also federal money available. Was that correct?
Yeah, 26 states actually. They're different. Some are fully funded programs. So, but if you Google around a little bit, you'll see soil health, Healthy Soils program is typically what it's called in various states. And then the federal government, through programs through Farm Bill and the commodity grant, the IRA grants, there's a lot of emphasis right now on getting carbon beneficial. But really, as I said, if you're improving carbon, the nice thing is you're typically improving a whole lot of other things on your farm or ranch.
Thank you so much. I'm glad I clarified 26 is even better than 16.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions in Carson City, Las Vegas, or Assemblyman Gurr over Zoom? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Millett, for the presentation. It was really interesting, and we enjoyed having you here today. And with that, we will close out our presentation on regenerative agricultural practices, and we will move into our next presentation on food production and food security in Nevada and a Home Means Nevada update, which I believe is item 10 on our agenda. So our final presentation, we're going to be hearing from Director Goa from the State Department of Agriculture, as well as Beth Martino, the CEO of 3 Square, and Nicole Lambalay, and I apologize if I mispronounced that, the President and CEO of the Food Bank of Northern Nevada. We appreciate you so much for joining us today, and I believe we have a mix of people both here in Las Vegas and up north in Carson City, where everyone is planning to present. So please go ahead and join us at the tables. I believe we're going to get started with Director Goa with the State Department of Agriculture, and then we'll move to 3 Square here in Las Vegas, and then to the Food Bank of Northern Nevada in Carson City. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to apologize if Senator Goycochea somehow offended someone in the past, and that's why we draw the last one before lunch. But having being raised with him, I know that sometimes you got to skip lunch. So, as stated, I am Director Goycochea, common spelling, but if you want it, it's Goicoechea. I do have 2 staffers online as well today, Patricia Hoppy and Brittany Malley. So when we get into the question phase of this, I will let the experts talk about it and not me. And also, I should note, what you guys do have, the packet, I did move some slides around, so they're not all going to be in there because in the interest of time, I don't think you guys needed to see it all. Just a little bit about the divisions we have. We do have 5 divisions. You can see that here. Here's our leadership team in there. I won't go over all of those today. Because we are talking about production in Nevada, I did want to talk just a little bit about the number of farms and what we've seen with National Ag Statistics. About 3,400 farms in Nevada on our last census. Of those, they make up a little over 6 million acres of farmland, average size about 1,800 acres. Top ag commodities. I think this is important because we're going to talk a lot about the fork here at the end, but we got to remember agriculture starts at the farm and goes all the way through the fork. So cattle and calves are our top commodity. I don't care how many times I go over these slides. We did miss a zero in that first one. It's $366.5 million annually. Cattle and calves, hay and alfalfa, about 148. Dairy sales, 246. And then food manufactured goods, 213. In the next slide, you might be a little bit confused. These aren't manufactured goods. This is actually some end processing that we do, such as coffee, for example, just to the south of us down here. So total economic output, under $1 billion in actual agriculture, but the food and beverage manufacturing, about $4 billion in the state of Nevada, which is significant. So we are taking these raw products and adding that value to them and passing them on to the consumer. Food insecurity, I think that's what we're really here to kind of talk about today. Up to 19, 1 in 8 were food insecure in the state of Nevada. That jumped significantly in 21, and we were ranked 8th nationally in food insecurity rates. We're still going over the numbers from the last couple of years. You guys will see those numbers come out over the next 60 days. We have some draft, but I was not ready to share those yet today because the numbers still are changing. So as far as what we do, I'll go through these next few slides fairly quickly. These are all administered by our Food and Nutrition Division as we go, but we could not do this without our partners like the Food Bank and 3 Square, and we will hear from them just in a minute. But we do have a good team across this state putting these programs together. Child and Adult Care Food Program, a little over 5 million meals and snacks served in 22. Summer Food Service Program, 2 million meals served in the state fiscal year 22. Farm to School program, this is another big one that we rely heavily on our partners with. Fresh Fruits and Vegetable program, about 3 million in federal funds distributed through that fiscal year of 22. National School Lunch Program, we've all heard about this. We know where we're at on that. In fact, we had an executive audit meeting yesterday, and we talked a lot about this and what we're going to do. But 39.5 million lunches served for the 22-23 school year as part of that program. School breakfast, 21 million breakfasts served in that 23 school year. Our specialty milk program, and this is kind of concerning. I know there are some allergies and things like that, but we sure have a lot less milk being served for whatever reason. And I don't, that's a great source of protein. So that's something we are focusing on if we need to kind of pivot a little bit there and try to get some more of that milk back into our schools to help our students with that source of protein. Child nutrition commodity support. We spent over $22 million USDA money in fiscal year 22. Emergency Food Assistance Program, 17 million pounds of food distributed to an average of 132,000 households. And I know our food banks are going to touch on this more, so we'll let them get into that just a little bit. This is another area that we need to see some improvement in. We continue to outreach to our Indian reservations, but average number of individuals served per month is 270 on our Indian reservations through fiscal year 22. We're continuing to reach out and see how we can better improve that program and get more of that delivery to those Indian reservations across the state of Nevada. Nutritional Services Incentive Program. This is an alternative to cash for senior centers, and we did provide $25,000 in USDA foods. Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. This is something, and Patricia can go into this a lot more if you guys do have specific questions on this. She's really good at this one, but we served about 5,000 seniors. We do have a voucher program for some of this, and I knew during the last legislative session I did testify to this committee, and there were some questions on that and that voucher, so hopefully you guys have that information as well. Just more on our Senior Nutrition Wellness Program. State processing, we take those primal cuts, if you will, of USDA, and we can break those down, and it saves a little bit of money when it comes to the schools, for example. So as we break those down, we can save our school district significant money through this, and we save them about $9 million through USDA processed foods. Now on to what I think everybody really cares about today was this Home Feeds Nevada. So this is a food purchasing distribution program that kind of helps Nevada become more food secure. It was really built to take the small and medium-sized producer and put that food into where our most needy are through our food banks. And so over the last year, we have really hit the accelerator on this. Since the program started in 22, we've purchased $3.5 million worth of food from local farms, ranchers, and processors. And you heard in public comment earlier about the total number of pounds, 2.3 million pounds. That's from September of 22, and this would have been through October 1st of this year. And you can see the breakout between Food Bank in Northern Nevada and 3 Square, pretty even there with how we're doing that. We've actually had a lot of really good outreach, and we've reached out into some of our smaller producers in our rural areas and got them involved in everything from ground beef to vegetable. I was talking to Mr. Fontaine over here earlier today, and there's a lot of interest in this, and there's a lot of these farmers want to do some co-ops and that kind of thing. And so I'm going to pause just for a second, and this is not in your slides, and I did it on purpose because we just announced it this morning. The Resilient Food System Infrastructure Grant, that went active today. We will take applications through the 29th of March, $1.2 million for the middle of the supply chain in Nevada. If you need refrigerated units, if you need trucks, if you need help with processing, get those applications in. I didn't put it in here because I want you to subscribe to our emails. I want you to follow us on social media. We are catching on. So if you guys want a Nevada Department of Agriculture, you will see it all over our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram today, and you can subscribe to our emails and look at that. And so I encourage your constituents to apply for those if they do have a need, and we'll continue to push that food to where it needs to be. So how the funding came about, you heard about the $2 million. I do just want to clarify that we did spend a lot of LFPA, local food purchase assistance money initially, a lot of that money. Now we're kind of back into the ARPA money. One was federal ARPA, this is state ARPA. So we're trying to stretch these dollars. I'm not going to lie to you a bit. We're trying to stretch them out so we don't see a fiscal cliff before maybe we can get to another legislative session and see what we can do to push those out. But we're using the $2 million now, and we've already spent significantly over the $2 million, and that's because we accessed another pot of money we had within the agency to try to spread that out and to stretch that out. So with that, I will stop because I know in the interest of time, and we're talking about food, and I like to eat, and I'm sure others do as well. Here's our contact information, and I will rest for questions and can move down the, I guess, do I need to move down the table, or are you guys going to talk, Shane, or? Yes, there you are. All right, Nicole's going to talk. you have it on here?
Hi, actually, we're going to go to 3 Square, and then we're going to go to the Northern Nevada Food Bank.
Okay.
So, and then we'll ask all questions at the end. Thank you so much for the presentation, Director, and we will all make sure we subscribe to the Nevada Department of Agriculture social media.
Thank you. I guess still good morning, almost lunchtime, I understand. So I will keep my comments brief. But I am Beth Martino, the president and CEO at 3 Square, and just going to provide a little overview of what we do and then touch on the role that Home Feeds Nevada plays. And I know you all have a packet of our slides. Before I jump into those, what I would just add is that we would invite anyone to come out to 3 Square anytime. We can tell you a lot about what we do, but I do think seeing our work in action is very meaningful. And so whether that's coming to 3 Square and visiting us or going to one of our partners and seeing what they do firsthand, the primary reason that we exist is really to try to reach our, members of our community that are in need. And as touched on already, there certainly is a need in Southern Nevada. At 3 Square, we serve Clark, Lincoln, Esmeralda, and Nye counties. And we know that in those counties, 1 in 8 are struggling with food insecurity. Of note, I would also add, I'm sure many of you have seen over recent weeks some news coverage of the cost of groceries and just generally what that has meant for consumers. Recent reports, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, were sharing that nationwide over the last 4 years, groceries have increased by 25%, and that most voters say that that has been the hardest inflationary cost for them to absorb, more so than anything else. Approximately 11% of household income is going to groceries, but for people who are low income, it's closer to 30%. So we are certainly seeing that reflected in what we do at 3 Square and what we do with our partners. 3 Square has been in existence since 2007. Last year, we served about 36 million meals, so 43 million pounds of food. And through those sources and through that food, we distributed into the community in a number of ways, primarily through our community partners. We have about 150 community partners here in Southern Nevada. So those are a variety of different types of nonprofit organizations that operate food pantries, pop-up weekend markets, all sorts of different kinds of distributions. But we also have some other programs to reach food insecure neighbors here in the community. First, I would highlight our benefit services outreach, which is a program that we developed at 3 Square to try to provide longer term support. Of course, we want to feed someone when they're hungry, but through our benefit services outreach efforts, we're able to do things like enroll them in SNAP benefits, assist them with Medicaid applications, connect them to utility or housing assistance. So really trying to address some of the root causes that might bring someone to a food pantry. Beyond that, 2 of the programs actually that the director touched on, our childhood nutrition program, most notably, do connect back to the state. We have our school year program, which we call Kids Cafe, which is directly connected to the state through the child and adult care feeding program that the director mentioned. And then our summertime program called Meet Up and Eat Up, which is through the summer food service program, both of which provide after school meals to children. In the summertime, that transitions to more of a breakfast and lunch meal, which we provide on sites like YMCAs and Boys and Girls Clubs. We also offer mobile delivery in the summer where we set up in locations where we know children might have transportation challenges. We also offer a backpack program. Right now in our 4 counties in Southern Nevada, we are delivering approximately 5,000 backpacks a week to schools all across the service area to help kids bridge that gap over the weekend from Friday until Monday when school lunch and breakfast kick back in. And then last, of course, we want to also consider seniors, some of the most vulnerable in our community as well. We have a robust set of senior programs at 3 Square. In the interest of time, I won't go into those in great detail, but a number of different things that we've developed to really try to reach into the senior community here in Southern Nevada. In terms of our impact, chart in your slides kind of shows what the food makeup looks like in terms of what we distributed. So we talk about distributing 36 million meals, but what all does that include? You can sort of see a visual depiction of that. I will say that the most in-demand item that we have is protein-based meat. We, of course, want to provide protein through other sources as well, since we know that meat can be particularly challenging for us to get. That's really where Home Feeds Nevada comes into play. We are able to source some high-quality protein, dairy, and produce through Home Feeds Nevada. You might wonder, where does a food bank get its food? And it's really three sources. First, we do actually purchase food ourselves, especially for some of our programs that reach children and seniors. We have very specific dietary guidelines that we're trying to adhere to. We have donated sources. That's our second main way of getting food, through food drives and large manufacturers and wholesalers. And then finally, through government programs. As the director highlighted, there's an emergency food assistance program that is run through the federal government and administered by the state, which is a fantastic source of food for us. Home Feeds Nevada is another great source of food that is through the state of Nevada, and I think a unique way of connecting the business community and farmers to food insecurity. So of the more than 1 million pounds that we've received at 3 Square, this is sort of a breakout of what that looks like. You can see 5% of that being protein, and I know that they're continuing at the Department of Agriculture to enhance the acquisition of protein, which is incredibly helpful for us. But really that produce and dairy piece too. These are three products that are in high demand and really help us provide nutritionally sound items to the neighbors that are coming to our food pantries. It's been distributed all across our service area. As we said earlier, we have maybe 150 to 160 partners, 132 sites that are receiving food from Home Feeds Nevada. So definitely reaching broadly across our service area here in Southern Nevada. In terms of our concerns with Home Feeds Nevada, as we talk to our farmers, we've heard from them firsthand that it has been a sustaining program for them. Some of our farmers saying that they might not have made it without being able to use this type of program. From our food pantries and the neighbors being served there, we hear that they love the products that are coming in through this program. So whether it's milk, whether it's protein, whether it's fresh fruits and vegetables, those things are welcome by our pantries and by our neighbors. So our hope is that as the director indicated, when we've exhausted some of the current sources of funding, that we can identify other ways to fund those programs. At 3 Square, our role, just as I'm sure the Food Bank of Northern Nevada will share, is not to make those kinds of decisions. The food comes to us and we distribute it. That's the role that we play. But we collaborate very closely with the Department of Agriculture, and we'll continue to do so to find ways that we can be supportive of the program. So with that, I'll pause and happy to answer questions later.
Thank you so much. We really appreciated the presentations from yourself and Director Goicoechea. And with that, we will move into the Northern Nevada Food Bank and welcome our representative, Nicole, and I apologize if I'm butchering your last name, Lambolet, President and CEO of the Food Bank of Northern Nevada.
Great, thank you. And for the record, Nicole, it can be Lambolet or it can be Lambolet. One works. I am the president and CEO of the Food Bank of Northern Nevada, and I'm not going to repeat a lot of what Beth already said because we do work together as the two food banks representing the state of Nevada. We are celebrating 40 years of serving our community, and so she mentioned the 4 counties that 3 Square serves. We serve the remaining counties, including the combined Carson City County City. And so we distributed last year a little over 19 million meals, so about half of what 3 Square did. And I'm really here to talk today about the Home Feeds Nevada Food Purchase Program because I was intimately involved in the creation of that legislation. Following our role and response during the 2020 pandemic, we realized what the unprecedented impacts were on food insecurity in the state. We saw record numbers. In April 2020, we served the largest number of people in a single month, which was 128,000 people. And we thought, wow, well, we'll never see that. By contrast, Today, we're serving 153,000 people per month. So the rate of food insecurity is rising for the many reasons Beth explained, the director has talked about, but we're number 2 in the nation on rising costs for groceries. So we're just right behind California, and when you look at those numbers, it's like the difference of $4 a week between those our two states. So that's significant. But really what we thought about as we looked at the post-pandemic response, food banks are innovative. We always think about how do we meet the needs of neighbors facing food insecurity in ways that supports their needs. And we know that they want access to healthy, nutritious food. How do we get that healthy, nutritious food? We get it from local food producers. And so we knew what was happening with Nevada agriculture. Everybody faced impacts from the pandemic, and we thought, is there a model that we could take looking at the federal commodity program and other commodity programs that have been developed by a number of states around the country? And out of that came the idea that Three Square and the Food Bank of Northern Nevada approached the Nevada Department of Ag and said, what if? And thanks to the legislative body, they heard us and said, well, let's try this program. And as you can see from the results in a short amount of time, there's been significant contribution by local producers in the agriculture sector that have supported feeding our community. And as Beth indicated, we hear from our clients and our neighbors how important it is that they receive locally produced food. They too desire to have the same type of food we all want in our pantries and in our refrigerators. And they want the high quality food that we see that is coming through the Home Feeds Nevada program. You know, the donated food stream is where we get a lot of our food. But we can't just rely on donated food. We are purchasing more food than ever. And again, thanks to the efforts of the last legislative session, we have been provided funding to purchase those necessary food items. But really what is so critical to Home Feeds Nevada is the types of food we are getting, the protein, the dairy. And we want this to be an economic impact on our local ag producers. We don't expect just to get donated food from them. They do provide us surplus food when they have it. But as the director has shared, we have a limited number of farms, and they are small farms, right? 1,800 acres might seem a lot to us, who just have a single household, but that is a small farm. And so we appreciate the efforts they have done, but we also want to support their continued economic growth and opportunity. And so that is why it is such an important program to us. It not only helps provide food source to our food banks, but it is really about how as a community we are working together, government, private sector, and nonprofits to feed people who face food insecurity. So I can give you all the statistics, but you don't want to hear that. I just wanted to give you the emotion of why this program means so much. And we were a little kitschy when we presented it. We said, well, let's give it a name, Home Feeds Nevada Agricultural Food Purchase Program. I don't sleep a lot. That's what happens when you think about how can we make this resonate? And it really was people in Nevada feeding our community. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about the impact, but we provided that all. And I agree with Beth. Anytime you can see our food banks and our partners, which is what we are, a network of partners, and which is why the legislation was designed the way it was to help go through the two food banks who have well over 300 partners, including school pantries, congregate feeding sites, church pantries, community pantries, all sorts of partners that help us get that food out to people in the farthest parts of our community and right in the urban core. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We really enjoyed all three presentations and the amazing work that you're doing with Home Feeds Nevada. We do have some questions, and we will start in Carson City with Vice Chair Anderson. Then we're going to come back to Vegas with Assemblywoman Considine, and then back up to Carson City with Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I know that you guys all have a very good working relationship, which is always good to see and celebrate. I actually have 3 questions. The first one has to do with the slide that had to do with the tribal numbers. And I didn't see the slide number, so I'm sorry about that. But you stated that it was 270 people on average per month, and that just felt kind of low to me. So I didn't know if that is because of other programs or how that number was figured out.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, do you wish me to go direct or through you?
Please go direct, thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you. That's a combination of things. There are other programs there, but in all honesty, I think we as the Department of Ag, and maybe all of us, even our partners, need to do a better job of outreach. A lot of us have those personal connections and relationships from those rural communities, and I know over the last year and a half, it's meant a lot to them to have me pick up the phone and reach out and say, what do you guys need? What can you do? And so that is something we are committed to do and continuing to do. So I think we need to do more outreach and just, what do you need? A lot of times they're not the ones that come to us. They kind of run a lot of that through their own tribal governments. And so I think that is why we don't see a lot of access through this.
And thank you so much for that clarification. That's what I figured it was, just knowing some of the other tribal governments and how they are always able to help each other out. My second question has to do with the grant. Sorry, there's somebody that wanted to add in.
Sorry.
It's quite all right. Please, as you were saying.
Madam Chair, for the record, Patricia Hoppy, I'm Administrator for the Nevada Department of Agriculture. If I may just add to Director Golkachia's answer, the way the food distribution program on Indian reservations work, it's a choice for the households and families to have FDIPR or to have SNAP. And so that's also one of the reasons that the caseload tends to be lower. It's actually a fluctuating caseload because they can kind of switch back and forth between FDIPR and SNAP. One of the things that happened as an example during the pandemic was, as you all may recall, SNAP benefits went way up. So we lost a lot of our caseload for FDIPR because our household moved to SNAP because it was just a better program for them where they could get more food that they needed to feed their families. So that's also one of the major impacts on that number.
Great. Thank you so much for that clarification. So if it's okay with you, Chair, I'll just power through and do my next question.
Please.
Thank you. My next question has to do with the summer food service programs in particular. I know that there's some federal legislation at this time that's being, that was approved during the December timeframe. So just was wondering what was happening with that, if that's going to make an impact on the current summer program, or if there's plans to make some changes. And I don't know if that's going to be a Department of Ag or if that's going to be the 2 programs. So whoever wants it.
So we can start with that. And Patricia and Brittany, I'll go to you. And Brittany and I talked about this yesterday as well. So whichever one of you'd like to take this.
So summer EBT right now the plan is for it to be implemented by our SNAP sister agency at Welfare. We're actually partnering with them. We're working very closely with them. They actually did pandemic EBT. So they actually have the infrastructure and the call center, and they have the system. They're able to use their same system for summer EBT that they did for pandemic EBT. So it was kind of a natural decision for them to go forward with that. They are still working out a lot of details. We've kind of put our plans together and submitted those to WRO with the letter of commitment for welfare. But they will actually be taking the lead on implementing summer EBT.
Thank you so much, and I'm sure that they'll more than likely be working with the 2 partners, so I didn't know if the 2 areas would also like to add in with that.
Sure. Thank you, Nicole Lamboli, CEO of Food Bank in Northern Nevada for the record. We are working closely with both departments, Health and Human Services as well as NDA. This will be a critical opportunity for us to provide explanation to eligible families, and we will be working with them to get that right messaging out. Also working with our partners in the school districts to make sure we're reaching eligible families. But we are also concerned about how to make sure that our summer feeding programs are also accessible. They're in addition to, they are not a replacement. It's not one or the other. Because we know even though they will have expanded SNAP benefits, the household is still food insecure, and even with the increase in dollars, we also know that the grocery prices continue to rise. So we will be encouraging families to utilize the summer feeding programs, at least for the Food Bank of Northern Nevada and our partners.
Beth Martino at 3 Square. I would just echo what Nicole said. I think in the summer program in particular, it's really critical for families because they don't have access to the school meal program. So that's really what we're oriented to, is encouraging that additional participation and trying to reach as broadly as we can. And here and then I'm sure this is true in Nicole's service area as well. In addition to providing it at sites such as after school type programs that then convert to summer camps, so places like YMCA's and Boys and Girls Clubs, we're also looking for ways to ensure we're getting out into the community to reach children and families that aren't going and aren't able to participate in those types of programs. So we will continue to look for ways to grow that, and of course working closely with the NDA. We offer mobile delivery here in our service area, and I think we want to grow that. We want to look for other ways to make it easier for people to access the summer feeding program. So we'll be continuing to work on that.
Thank you so much for those clarifications and the plan. It sounds like there's been a robust discussion around this issue. My last question has to do with the school nutrition. And in particular, I'm happy to hear that you want to expand the milk program. I think that's very important. But I'm just curious as to the process currently for school lunches and for school breakfast, since that is currently more of a federal program. And in particular, I'm wondering about next school year based upon legislation that did not make it through.
Thank you, Assemblywoman, and I can kick this over to Brittany to clean up as well. But so we are spending the remaining money that we have. That will end July of this year as we come out of the school year. We are actively engaged with our school districts across the state. They need to enroll so that they can enroll in that federal program. Clark County School District has done a wonderful job down south. The entire district does qualify now for that free reduced, if you will, lunch and breakfast program down there. But we've got a lot of schools in the north that aren't. They're not applying for it, or they're not figuring out how they can combine with other schools to get that where it needs to be. So, Brittany, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yes. Yes. Director's talking about the community eligibility
Brittany,
program.
can you
so what
please
we
share
call
your
C-
full name for the record?
Oh, yes,
Brittany,
I'm
please
sorry.
share your.
Brittany Malley, Deputy Administrator for our Division of Food and Nutrition. As I was saying, he was talking about the community eligibility program. So that schools can qualify to be on that program, and then all the students at those schools eat for free. The time for that renewal is coming up in April, and we're doing trainings and webinars to all the school districts on the program, and they have made it easier to qualify this year. They brought the threshold down from 40% to 25%. So we're going to try and get as many schools on that we can. And then we have monthly forums and town halls with the schools as well to get them ready for what next year will look like. Also, transitioning back to normal. So we're doing everything that we can to try and get everybody ready for the schools that might not be able to qualify for the CEP program.
Thank you so much for that clarification, and I appreciate did not know that it had moved down to 25%, so that's really good news. And it sounds like Clark is doing a good job. Do we know of any other districts besides Clark that's doing a good job, or are all the other districts kind of like, we don't know what to do? Okay, sounds like based upon your affirmative, somebody else wants to answer that, sorry.
I can answer. So Brittany Marley again for the record. We have 6 districts in the state that are what we call district-wide CEP, where every school in that district is a CEP school, so everybody's eating for free. Besides Clark, that is Nye County. They've done a great job. They have at least maybe 20 schools, more than that. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly. Mineral County, Churchill, Esmeralda, they're tiny. And there's a couple charters that have multiple schools as a part of them as well, where every campus is CEP. And then Washoe has a fair amount on it as well, but they do not have, they don't do the same type of grouping that Clark does, so they do not have everybody. But we don't have very many schools in the state that, if they can participate, that they don't. We do a lot of reaching out and education to try and get everybody on that they can. It's a yearly thing, so it's not new. So we talk about this every year around the same time with these schools and school districts.
Thank you so much for that clarification, and good luck on the grant that's on, again, it was on the Nevada Department of Agriculture website, correct? Okay, thank you so much, and thank you, Chair.
All right, we're going to move into Las Vegas and Assemblywoman Considine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this presentation. I'm very familiar with 3 Square and the great work that you do, but learning about the rest of this is very enlightening. And I did have a couple of questions on the Home Feeds Nevada. I know earlier it was mentioned that there are 3,400 farms, but what is the requirements for the farm to participate? Is there a size, or I'm just curious?
Thank you, Assemblywoman.
Hi,
And
Patricia Hoppe.
go ahead, Patricia.
Patricia Hoppe for the record, Administrator for the State Department of Agriculture. So we have fairly straightforward requirements, things such as they have to have a state vendor number so that they can be paid by the state. They also have to have a sam.gov or the UEI number so that they can receive federal funds, which is a federal requirement. If they are a farmer, they're required to have a producer certificate that comes from NDA, from our Plant Health and Compliance Division, that they have been certified to be a producer in the state. And then after that, we have a running RFA on our website where anyone is at any time is able to go through the application and submit an application for the program. They're able to kind of detail, they do self-report the size of their farm or their ranch, whatever they have. And that's based on USDA's measurement of annual gross cash farm income. And so small producers are less than 350, medium producers are 350 to 999, and then large scale would be over $1 million. And so they do self-report the size of their farm. And then they also have the opportunity to submit a variety of choices of products and things that they would like to grow, that they would like to process, that they would like to submit, that they would like to serve to the program as part of that process. And then they submit that online application to us, and we go through and evaluate the application. We typically kind of have an interview call, so to speak, where we go through a lot of the requirements of the program and how it works and processes and procedures, and go through everything that they've submitted on their application. We do verify that they have all of those items in place before they can actually participate in the program. So that's the application process. We try to keep it pretty straightforward and simple because most of our producers are small producers.
Thank you very much for that information. I'm hoping more people heard that. And then my second question is on the initial slide deck about the state processing program, where it works with commercial food processors to convert into end products like applesauce, chicken nuggets, string cheese. One, is that processing done in Nevada? And then do we know what percentage of processed food goes into the school lunch and programs?
I'm going to toss that over to our Deputy Administrator, Brittany Malley.
Brittany Malley, for the record. So that processing is not done in Nevada typically. So it goes out to companies such as Tyson for chicken products, Genio for turkey products, that type of thing. So it's on a national scale because they're doing this for all of the school lunch programs in America. And then we don't have a percentage that we keep for how many products are processed in the school meal programs. So usually it depends on what type of operation the school has for how they're going to serve their meals and make them, and what they're having for lunch or breakfast that day. So we don't have a particular number, if that's what you're looking for.
Thank you. Is there any baseline or any, to your knowledge, of school lunch, how much should be fresh and how much should be processed, or is that we don't have any baselines for that?
There are no regulations for that, like there are for the meal pattern. I mean, there's regulations on they have to offer fruits and vegetables at every meal. So those are typically fresh compared to what the entree would be. But there are no regulations from USDA that they have to follow to meet for those standards.
All right, thank you so much. We're going to move back to Carson City and Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for the work you're doing for our families and especially children in our communities. As a teacher and also as a parent of a first grader, I definitely am concerned about our school meals. I echo my colleagues' concerns about the amount of processed food that is in our school meal program, but I am also very concerned about this food cliff that we are about to go off with the lack of universal school meals next year. And I know that part of why that legislation was vetoed was concerned about meal quality. And so I just wondered what is being done currently to improve the quality of those meals so that we don't have that concern anymore.
I'll let Brittany or Patricia weigh in, but I will tell you again that USDA sets those standards. And so we obviously have those conversations. I don't think it's a news flash to anyone in the room or in Las Vegas or online. If you're watching Congress right now, we're going to be dang lucky to get them to agree on a nickel, let alone what the food's supposed to be. So we need to engage more with the USDA, especially going forward with the Farm Bill that we hope to see very soon because we need that. We're operating under an expired one. That's where we're going to make those changes, is back there. And we will do whatever USDA gives us the guidance. We'll make sure that that's the food that we are putting out in the state of Nevada. Ladies, do you have anything you want to add to that?
And this is Brittany Malley for the record. I agree. When we go out and look at these schools, we're looking to make sure they're meeting this meal pattern that is set forth by USDA. And these schools and districts are doing that with what they are serving. If they're not, we have them correct it. But we also offer technical assistance and provide a lot of resources for them for scratch cooking, different types of flavors. There's a ton of stuff that comes out all the time for this, but it's up to the individual school district and the school food authority to implement those changes at their level.
Chair, may I follow up with that?
Yes.
I just want to clarify, though, that the federal regulations, are those the floor or the ceiling? Are we allowed to improve the quality beyond that floor, or are we required to explicitly give kids the exact food that they are saying in that bill?
So Brittany Malley for the record, we're not telling them the type, I mean, we are kind of the type, but they have like a calorie range they have to meet, right? They have to serve whole grains, low fat milk, fruits and vegetables and proteins on a daily basis as a part of every meal. So that's what they're trying to meet, and that's what we're looking for. We're not dictating and telling them exactly the types that have to fit within that. There's plenty of food options that are out there for them to choose from to help meet that meal pattern and the nutrition standards every day. So we're trying to make sure they're staying within those parameters. So Patricia, do you have something else?
Yeah, I would add, as the agencies that have statewide oversight, our statewide oversight is for the federal program regulations, which includes the federal meal pattern that USDA comes out with, that every school food authority and their menus and meals must meet. And that's what Brittany is describing. So with respect to our authority, our hands are tied at that level. As part of our administrative compliance review, we are looking to ensure that they have program integrity and they're meeting the meal pattern. Now, does our school nutrition team take advantage of opportunities because they do go on site and they have site reviews? They review a variety of meals, breakfast and lunch. They're in the cafeterias watching what's going on. Do they take advantage of technical assistance to talk to them about these things and give them ideas of, how they can do better, fresher ingredients, things that they could incorporate? We absolutely do that every opportunity that we have. We also have a monthly forum with all of our school authorities in the state, and sometimes food issues do come up. We bring that up as a topic and have conversations and give all of the different school authorities to talk about the things that they're doing. That's kind of where the line in the sand is for us, is we can make recommendations. We can't, from a compliance standpoint, do more than that, except for the federal meal pattern. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, Assemblywoman. So, to be just very clear, it's the floor. You're exactly right. That's what it is. Can we do better? Absolutely. Part of the problem is when you look at what is that reimbursement rate. So when a school district gets that reimbursement rate from the USDA for free lunch, $4 to $4.50 per student, that's what they're bound by. If I can go buy chicken nuggets at 99 cents processed a pound or fresh at $4.99 a pound, they have got to balance our budget as well, and that is something that we deal with. It's the basement. That's the foundation that they must feed those children at, and those school districts have to make their ends meet as well.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, do we have any other questions in Las Vegas or in Carson City or Assemblyman Gore over Zoom? Okay. Seeing none, I thank you all so much for the presentation. We really appreciate the update on Home Feeds Nevada and all of the great work that you're doing. And we look forward to seeing you back at a future date or come the next legislative session. And with that, we will close out item number 10. And thank you so much to all of you in person in Las Vegas, in Carson City, and over Zoom for contributing to this presentation. And we will move on to agenda item number 11. Our final agenda item, which is public comments. This is our second period of public comments. And again, in order to dial in, please dial 888-475-4499. When prompted, please enter meeting ID 894-8374-8658, and then press the pound sign. The wonderful broadcast and production services staff will indicate to you when it's your turn to speak. Please remember to clearly state and spell your name and limit your comment to 2 minutes. Do we have anyone in Las Vegas wishing to provide public comment? Seeing no one rushing to the front, do we have anyone in Carson City who'd like to share public comment? All right, Ms. Case, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, for the second bite at the apple. Leah Case, on actually just on my own behalf, Bells and Case Government Affairs. It's come to my attention that not as many people appreciate a good audit committee as much as I do. And so if you did not see the Executive Branch Audit Committee yesterday, they did release the report of the review of Nevada's 17 public school districts and the state public charter school authority. And if you move to Exhibit 5 or Chapter 5, they talk specifically about school meal funding and the community eligibility provision. This audit is 146 pages long, and I had to run across the street to the governor's office to get a hard copy. It's not yet posted, but I've been told it will be available by the end of today on the Executive Branch Audit Committee website, and you can review all of the recommendations in there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Case. We really appreciate that. And also the opportunity to say hello to your daughter earlier. Do we have any other comments in Carson City? All right, no more public comments there. Broadcast, do we have anyone over the phone?
If you'd like to participate in public comment, please press *9 on your phone to take your place in the queue.
Hi, can I go?
Please share your name, spell your name, and proceed for 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sabina Malik, SABINA-MALIK. I'm faculty in Healthy Food Systems at UNR Extension and serve as the chair of the Southern Nevada Food Council and also on the board of the Small Agriculture Roundtables for Nevada. I wanted to submit support for Home Feeds Nevada as an innovative local agriculture and economic development program administered by Nevada Department of Agriculture. The products served as fresh produce, dairy, and protein from local farmers in Nevada, delivering these goods to our 2 food banks for distribution to more than 250 partners and food pantries throughout the state. Over the past year alone, the program has injected millions of dollars directly to our local producers and farming community, enabling the purchase of over 2 million pounds of locally sourced food distributed through our food banks to all 17 counties. Small farms in Nevada are commonly at risk and have majorly benefited from this funding, with many citing the program as a lifeline that saved their operations from collapse, facilitated expansion, and even allowed for hiring additional staff. Among numerous benefits, this vital program has proven instrumental in sustaining our local farms and producers, reducing barriers they face in making their produce accessible, and ensuring nutritious meals for our community through the charitable food system, promoting equity in the food system, and mitigating emissions associated with transporting food from outside Nevada. The Food Council works to ensure nutrition security through programming, providing equitable access, availability, affordability of food and beverages that prevent disease for a thriving society. This Home Feeds Nevada program upholds those values, providing quality, nutritious food grown by Nevadans for Nevadans. And we ask for your continued support and attention on this crucial program as we strive to secure long-term solutions for the sustainability of it. Thank you.
Look at that. Perfectly timed, Dr. Malik. Thank you very much for your comments on Home Feeds Nevada. Broadcast, do we have any other comments over the phone?
Caller, you are unmuted and you may
Yes,
begin.
Can I go ahead?
Please proceed. Share your name, spell your name, and you have up to 2 minutes.
My name is Rodney Mehring, RODNEYMEHRING. I own and operate Blue Lizard Farm in Caliente, Nevada, and I just want to throw my support behind Home Feed Nevada. It has been a lifeline for my small farm. We provided 20,000 pounds of fresh produce and fruit to Home Feed Nevada, through Home Feed Nevada to 3 Squares this last year, and we hope to double that production this year. I would like to ask the legislature to find ways to help keep Home Feed Nevada funded. It's for farms. We are very front heavy, so we're investing thousands of dollars for later returns on our produce. And if the funding were to end, it would put us out of business. Perhaps the legislature could find out ways to help offset funding between grant opportunities. And I just want to thank everybody that presented today. It was amazing. I want to thank the Nevada Department of Agriculture. They're doing an outstanding job of running the Home Feed Nevada program, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maring, and thank you for the work you do. And we did get your letter as well, and that is posted. Do we have any other comments from BPS? Thank you.
Chair, the public line is open and working. However, there are no more callers at this time.
All right, seeing no one else in Las Vegas or Carson City, we will close out agenda item number 11 and move to number 12, adjournment. But before we adjourn, just a couple of very quick announcements. As previously mentioned, the Subcommittee on Public Lands awaits the recommendation of the tribal representative of the Intertribal Council of Nevada. They are appearing to meet in early March, at which time they're expecting to make that recommendation. Following that meeting and recommendation, I intend to appoint the representative of tribal governments to the subcommittee. Please note that the Subcommittee on Public Lands is scheduled to have its first meeting on Friday, March 22nd in Schurz, Nevada. And our next meeting for the Interim Joint Natural Resources Committee will be on Friday, April the 5th. Thank you so much for participating in challenging weather conditions, especially up in the north. I appreciate every one of you and all of the wonderful questions today, and I look forward to seeing you April 5th. That concludes this meeting. And so with that, this meeting is adjourned.